Richard Tice pledges to end net zero madness to reindustrialize Britain. Oh wait, I had some video with Tice open. Fuck, did I close it? 5.5 minutes. They said humiliates. Uh-oh, what's this?
Now, I'm not a fan of Julia Hart-Brewer. She spends most of her day drumming up hate and division, and it's only very occasionally that actually says something sensible. So in the clip I'm about to show you, she absolutely shreds Richard Tice to pieces over his support for Donald Trump and Putin's call to end the war but take some of Ukraine's territory. See, she's very articulate and very clever, and she's worked out that hating on people is the best way to tap into people's emotions, which in turn gets people talking about her, feeding her content. In boosting her fame, it's a vicious cycle. She gets more famous, richer and angrier, and the people that she's hating on get more and more abuse thrown at them. It's usually the marginalised society, which already have it hard.
It was a year ago. It's just about Ukraine. Is this
but
relevant
sometimes,
to this, or?
just sometimes, she can actually use her platform and her rage to do some good. And it's normally Reform get an easy ride on Talk TV and GP News, giving them platforms to spout their nonsense unchallenged. Yet Julia Hart-Brewer was having none of it, and what she said is spot on. You see, Nigel Farage has aligned himself for many years with President Trump and is a big fan of Putin, saying that it was NATO's fault that Russia invaded. So when your leader of your party is aligned with Trump and Putin, you're going to have to go along with his position, otherwise you risk your own position in the party. And that's what exactly Richard Tice finds himself in, defending an utterly ridiculous stance and then making himself look like a complete fool, tying himself up in knots, trying to defend that rubbish. Julia Hart-Brewer is absolutely right that Reform talk about sovereignty, and yet Richard Tice says he would defend his country until he died, but in the next breath saying that Ukraine should give up their territory to stop the killing. If only she would put this much effort into holding every politician to account, regardless of the colour rosette. But for now, we'll have to cherry pick out the best ones, and this is a very good one. Enjoy.
It's Russia that's killing people. If Russia stopped fighting, if Russia wanted to end the war, if Russia stopped fighting, Russia could just stop fighting. There wouldn't be a war, no one would be killed.
And that would be
hey,
great.
our job done.
Yeah,
well, why doesn't the West take that to Russia?
Ultimately, maybe that's what the negotiations
Which part of Britain would you give away if we were invaded and you wanted to negotiate peace?
None at all.
Oh, so we wouldn't give away any of Britain. But it's okay to give away a bit of Ukraine.
Hang on, it's not us giving it away, Julia. Right? It's Ukraine. And
Ukraine doesn't want to give it away.
Of course it doesn't. But ultimately, as everybody said, it is Zelensky's decision. But ultimately, we've got to stop killing people.
If we were invaded and our close allies in NATO, like the United States, basically supported us for a bit, they gave us just enough support so we could actually not lose, but not enough to win.
Yeah.
And after 3 years, whoever was president of the United States said,
to try and negotiate a solution.
So at which point Donald Trump, let me finish, says, oh, well, we're going to have a negotiation, but we're going to let the Russians, whoever invaded us, keep our territory. Just to clarify, just how much of British territory would you be willing to give away in those negotiations?
Ultimately, in Northern Ireland, there was a negotiation to stop the killing. It involved horrendous compromises that lots of people didn't want to make.
Give away territory.
We stopped killing people.
We didn't give away territory.
That's also
correct. We didn't give away territory to invade wars. That's a ridiculous analogy.
It's a completely valid analogy. Wars.
Sorry, who invaded Northern Ireland?
Wars stop when people stop killing people.
No, wars stop. Wars stop when one side is defeated. Sorry, have you heard of the Second World War?
Yes.
Did we negotiate the ending of the Second World War?
There are lots of other wars where ultimately people negotiate a peace. Otherwise, you just carry on. How long are we going to carry on with this?
Falklands.
Yeah, Falklands we won.
Oh yeah, we didn't just negotiate the Argentina and give them some of the...
Okay, this is not relevant. What is this just, is this just drill baby drill? Bro, dude, Reform really is literally just fucking MAGA.
So he's been giving a
What is this? Why was I linked this?
speech. He's been talking about the North Sea. Mm-hmm. Let's get the North Sea operating, he said. Let's have a look at some of the new onshore gas fields.
Who has served as Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero since July 2024, and currently is, right, for the Labour Party, this guy.
That have been found in this country that will produce tens of thousands of well-paid jobs. I mean, you're not fond of drilling in the North Sea. What is the answer?
Nigel Farage. Look, here's the point about the North Sea. The North Sea is what they call a declining basin. Now, we've said we're going to keep existing oil and gas fields open for their lifetime, but we're not going to issue new licenses to explore new fields in the North Sea. Now, why is that? Because we both want to have a just transition in the North Sea to protect the workers there, and we want to make sure that we do the right thing environmentally, and I think we can do both. Now, what Nigel Farage sounds like he's talking about onshore is fracking, which your viewers will be familiar with. Fracking, and by the way, this is true of the oil and gas produced domestically also. It's really important to say this. It's sold on the world market, right? Why did energy bills go through the roof when Russia invaded Ukraine? They went through the roof because we were reliant on fossil fuels, and whether they came from domestically or came internationally, they were priced at the same level. So Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a massive shock in those markets, the prices went up, and the British people paid the price direct to the oil and gas companies. Homegrown clean energy offers something different because it offers a fixed price for wind or nuclear or solar where we get to control it. And so then on fracking, well, people don't want fracking. I mean, go around the country and suggest to the people, to the areas that want fracking whether they want it. They say no. It won't take a penny off bills for the reason that I've set out. And frankly, I don't believe some of the fantasies of Nigel Farage about the scale that we could produce from that. And why go for expensive...
Jesus, so he's talking about that clearing price in the same way that we just argued last night about them for all the mixed energy. Could you not tell your energy manufacturers that you're not allowed to export the energy if you nationalize the fields? But then I guess that could end up being a huge Could you do that? If it was selling for more, oh no, because then you would just be fucking yourself, right? Because then you could be making a lot more money for your country by exporting the energy, but then your own prices would increase. Yeah, fuck. Oh shit, that is an issue I guess I never really considered. Huh. Well, but then you could be exporting it. That'd be good too, though, no? Because then you'd make money on it, no? Your country would, if it was nationalized, or I guess your companies would. But I guess this wouldn't really help your average citizen, maybe.
Secure fossil fuels when we can have homegrown clean energy that we control ourselves.
So when he says that bills are going to get cheaper if you do grant these exploration licenses, is he lying?
He's just talking nonsense. He's just talking nonsense. And also, in a sense, to the viewers who are watching this and thinking, well, Ed might say that, the last Conservative government said more North Sea production is not going to affect bills, not going to cut bills. That was what they said. Greg Hands, Kwasi Kwarteng, 2 previous Conservative ministers said that. Now, it's really important. The oil and gas is going to be with us for decades to come. We do want to make sure we have a just transition for those workers. By the way we do that is in the new technologies as well. Carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, offshore wind. Because under the last government, they lost 70,000 jobs in the North Sea because they didn't build that future for them.
What other projects are you embarking on? What can people expect to see over the next year or so?
I think it's so exciting, this, because we just unveiled our Clean Energy Jobs Plan, which essentially forecasts an extra 400,000 jobs in clean energy by 2030. So that's a doubling of clean energy jobs. And what jobs are they? We're building new nuclear at Sizewell C, 10,000 construction jobs, and jobs also running the nuclear power plant. Jobs in offshore wind, jobs in carbon capture and storage, net zero at Teesside. So the point is, for such a long time, people in this country have said, where are the good jobs of the future going to come from? And I had this experience the other day of going to Sheffield Forge Masters, which is a company in Sheffield, and just talking to the young people there about the opportunities that manufacturing for clean energy provided. They feel they're building the future and doing so in a way that provides them with a living. And, that's the point, I suppose. I feel like we're doing the right thing for future generations. And as I say, talking to young people this morning, they want us to act on this. But we're also about better lives today, good jobs, energy security and lower bills, cleaning up our air so we tackle air pollution. And I think we can do both of these things.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I suppose you've got a brief that is a long-term brief, and we're not very good at, as a country, actually, in accepting long-termism. Is that frustration for you when you're working in the department? I mean, you talk about Sizewell C, the construction job, it's a long way off, isn't it? You think back to that clip of Nick Clegg, quite an ill-fated clip of him now saying that it would take 10, 15 years to build it, so there's no point in bothering.
I don't know that clip, actually. Nick Clegg has a number of great hits. I mean, look, we are in the long-term business, and I think that really matters, but I suppose we're also in the better lives business now. When I meet people who are working in clean energy, they're saying, these are great jobs for now. When I think about Great British Energy, that's put solar panels on the roofs of 250 schools, 250 hospitals, that's making a difference now to public services. It's releasing money from energy bills into frontline public services. And by the way, I think we're just in the foothills of what this clean energy revolution can achieve. Only 1 in 20 is my current personal obsession. Only 1 in 20 homes in the UK have solar panels on their roof. 1 in 20. In other countries, it's much more. One of the things we're working on is how can we help make it financially viable? And this is the thing I would underline. We're all about making it in people's financial interests to make the switch to clean energy. Because there's no point in asking people to pay through the nose. People haven't got the money to do that. And so whether it's solar on rooftops or heat pumps or helping people with the batteries or insulation, it's finding ways in which we make this economically viable for people.
And that is sort of the push for heat pumps, right, and for people to get one in their home. But I just want to bring you back onto, transition into good clean energy jobs. Yeah. I look at somewhere like Port Talbot, and I've reported from there multiple times, the botched sort of closure of Tata Steel that has left many people without a job. And there's a government promise to get those people back into work. Do you see them going into, say, a clean energy solution or a clean energy factory in that area? Is there going to be anything built there, or will there be retrained for something else?
One of the things that we're engaged in is investment in the port in Port Talbot, so it can be a centre for clean energy. There's huge opportunities in floating offshore wind, for example. So the answer is 100% yes.
That steel would have been good there for that offshore wind, no?
Indeed, but that's why the plans on the electric arc furnace are important. And look, our job is to make sure this transition is just. And I get that there'll be people who are really worried about the way the world is changing and what is it going to mean for them. And we totally accept, whether it's in the North Sea or elsewhere, our obligation, and this is what I take so seriously as part of a Labour government, our obligation to make that work for people. But what I know in my heart of hearts is, I just think about my constituency in Doncaster, ex-mining constituency. Lots of people voted for Brexit there, almost 10 years ago now. And so many people said the same thing to me, which is, we're voting for a better future for our kids and grandkids. Now, what they meant by that was, we felt like we used to have good jobs here, good jobs that paid a decent living. And that is, if you like, the kind of unanswered question that so many people in our country have had. And there is this answer staring us in the face. And we've got to seize that answer. And
I don't hate distractions, but this green energy dude used to lead the Labour Party and tried to act tough in an interview, but critically misspoke, and it's one of the most cringy, embarrassing things ever.
A bloke on the tube said to me last week, Ed Miliband goes into a room with Vladimir Putin. The door is closed. 2 minutes later, the door is opened again, and Vladimir Putin is standing there smiling, and Ed Miliband is all over the floor in pieces.
Was that David Cameron who you met on the tube?
No, it wasn't. I don't think he uses the tube very much. But
That's rather unfair, Tim, I think.
it is unfair.
Yeah.
But you understand what the point is here. The point is people think you're just not tough enough.
Well, let me tell you, right? Let me tell you. Okay.
Come on.
Let me tell you. Okay, in the summer of 2013, this government proposed action in Syria, the bombing of Syria, right? I was called into a room by David Cameron and Nick Clegg because President Obama had been on the phone, the leader of the free world, right? I listened to what they said, and over those days I made up my mind and we said no, right? Now, I think standing up to the leader of the free world, I think shows a certain toughness, I would
proud
say.
of what's happened in Syria since?
I'm not proud of it, no. It's a failure of the international community. But what I'm not going to do is repeat the mistakes of the 2003 Iraq war, which happened when Labour was in power, which is a rush to war without knowing what your strategy is and without being clear about what the consequences would be. I'm not a pacifist. So I did support action in Libya, and David Cameron talked about how I supported action against ISIS. But am I tough enough? Tough enough? Hell yes, I'm tough enough.
Was that, am I tough enough? Is that? Okay. That was a 9 out of 10 meme? Okay. Okay. On July 29, 2024, a mass stabbing targeting young girls occurred at the Heart Space, a dance studio in the Mills Cop area of Southport, Merseyside, United Kingdom. 17-year-old Axel Ruda Cubana killed 3 children and injured 10 others at a Taylor Swift-themed yoga and dance workshop attended by 26 children. 2 girls died at the scene, 6 injured children, and 2 adults were taken to hospital in a critical condition, and a 3rd girl died the following day. Wee, 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 wee. "17-year-old Axel Ruda Cubana killed by stabbing. 3 children and injured 10 others. Ooh, that's relevant. Okay, hold on. Day after the attack, rioters clashed with police in Southport and damaged a mosque after misinformation about the attacker's identity, which had not been publicly released, was spread online. This is a huge deal. We heard about this even in the US or whatever, right? Ugh, what? Nigel Farage's leader in Wales was arrested for... We already got this. Stop. This motherfucker had ricin? Jesus Christ. Jesse. After Ruda Cubana's guilty pleas, it emerged that he had a history of violent and concerning behavior and had been referred to the Home Office Anti-Extremism Program PREVENT 3 times between 2019 and 2021, but was not accepted into the scheme as no terrorist ideology was identified. Prime Minister Keir Starmer promised to overhaul terrorism laws to include non-ideological acts of violence and appointed David Anderson to lead a review of the PREVENT program. I feel like you should probably just get rid of the... Maybe I was gonna get rid of the concept of terrorism and just treat it all as like mass killings or mass whatever the fuck.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Good afternoon.
We have limited time, so I hope you won't mind if I jump straight in what you've been saying in the last few days. You began with a video in the immediate aftermath of the Southport stabbings that engaged in conspiracy theories about who did this and about whether the police were telling the truth. You said, and I'm quoting here, some reports suggest he, the man charged, was known to the security services. Which reports?
This is the problem, isn't it? One of the reasons the Southport riots were as bad as they were is we weren't told the truth. There were stories online from some very prominent folks with big followings, Andrew Tate, etc., suggesting the man had crossed the English Channel in a boat in October 2023. Other suggestions that he was an active Muslim. And much of this led to the riots that we saw.
But you amplified that because you said some reports suggest.
I asked a very simple question. Was this person known or not? Now,
Dustin, I haven't heard this at all. He's going to obfuscate like Trump did with Russia, 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 and more British language. Wait, what? You didn't hear about this? I think this led to the big, there was like a mosque burning, and people were really mad about this because I don't know if Farage was at the center of this or other people were, but like there was a lot of misinformation spread about the attacker.
To the security services.
Absolutely.
And that's a perfectly legitimate question, which was raised by Yvette Cooper. But, Nigel
Yes.
Farage, you didn't just...
I asked a very simple question. Was this person known or not? Now,
To the security services.
Absolutely.
And that's a perfectly legitimate question, which was raised by Yvette Cooper. But, Nigel
Yes.
Farage, you didn't just do that, did you? You said
Yes.
some reports suggest he was known to the security services. Those reports were from a fake news website amplified by Russian state TV and, as you mentioned, Andrew Tate. Which ones were you looking at?
which adds to what I was asking for. Give us some clarity. Had we had... I mean, remember, the London Bridge attacker, we knew within an hour that this person was known to the security services. Whenever in Northern Ireland there was a terrorist outrage, very quickly people were told the background of the perpetrator.
But you didn't
I
just
asked
stop
a
there.
very simple question.
You said some reports suggest he was known to the security services. Those reports were a fake news website, Russian state TV,
Well,
and
I could
Andrew
have said.
Tate.
I
So
could
which-
have said.
So which one
I could
was
have
it, Nigel
said.
Farage?
I could have said. Some reports suggest he crossed the Channel last October. Some reports suggest he's an active
all of
Muslim.
that was unfounded.
I did none of those things. What I asked for was clarity. We didn't get clarity,
didn't
and
just
I
do
would
that.
argue that what happened in Southport would not have been of the same magnitude had the truth been told, and told very, very quickly. It wasn't for
You don't
many
need to
hours
amplify
that
the
we learnt more.
mistruths. No, you're right. But that was the chronology of it. But you don't need to amplify the mistruth.
I asked the question.
To cite, quotes, some reports suggest the reports are fake. And you accept that now. They're
No, no, no,
misinformation.
There were thousands.
I just don't understand this. Well, I mean, if I just treat him like a bad faith actor, but taking this argument on its merits, what is the obsession with needing to know every single thing about the attack in the first like couple hours? Like, what are you waiting for? Do you have like a poly market bet waiting to clear? Are you about to make a big investment in knife defense systems in your hometown that's near the stat? Like, why do we need to have this? Jesus, so stupid.
Thousands of fake reports everywhere,
you cited
all of which puts the emphasis on the questions being answered, which they weren't.
So did you accidentally fall for that misinformation?
No, I didn't believe any of it.
Or did you know it was wrong from the get-go?
I hadn't got a clue.
So why did you cite it?
Because people wanted to know the truth, and if they had known the truth, Tom, the riots would not have been of the same magnitude.
You're not just people. You are an elected representative of the people in a position,
representing
in
a question
of authority.
representing a question that was being asked by millions at the time, which regrettably did not get answered. Now look, here's the point.
Ever, or just in the first like 12 hours or whatever? Like,
Right? There are people out there suggesting that in some way, despite after 30 years of fighting all sorts of different elections, of believing that the democratic process is the way to deal with arguments, debates, and solve problems. I have never been involved in street protest. I have never been involved in violence. I have always been 1,000 miles away.
Well, literally, in this
from
case, I think you're
far
abroad.
right agitators, from conspiracy theorists. I've always been as far away from those people as I can possibly be.
Well, you had some in UKIP, which I think is one of the reasons why you left UKIP. Paul Waters.
Well, actually, I left UKIP after 25 years.
So back to what you
said. I left
said.
UKIP after 25 years because the leadership at the time encouraged Tommy Robinson to be a part of it. I did more to get rid of the BNP as a political force in Britain than anybody else in the country.
You amplified this misinformation.
No,
Tom,
you
did.
are getting this wrong.
Some
I said,
suggest.
give us clarity.
You didn't just say that, though, Nigel.
I did.
You also said the internet was awash with all sorts of theories, all of which proved to be unfounded.
Yes.
But that's what led to the riots in Southport. But you indulged in those theories.
By the way, I've still not been told whether this person was on a list or not. I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
No, I don't know. But
What? Or was what?
Wait, by the way, I've still not been told whether this person was on a list or not. I don't know.
On a list. Okay.
The answer to that. Do you?
No, I don't know. But that's why it's a legitimate question.
Do you think we deserve to know?
Absolutely. I think the police need to give us the
So my
answer.
question is still valid.
Your question is valid, but not in the way that you put it, because you know what you're doing. You suggested some reports suggest that he was known to the security service, that he came on in a boat, that he was an asylum seeker. That's not true.
And I didn't.
And my question to you is, did you know that
I
was not
didn't.
true?
I don't know now whether this man was known to the
So
police
why are
or
you
not.
promoting those reports?
Because I want to know the truth. I wanted to know it then, and I want to know it now. And I get the feeling we're not always being told the whole truth.
Okay, let's come to that, because you also said that. You wondered whether, and I'm quoting again, the truth about Southport was being withheld from us. What evidence do you have that the police are lying to people?
The evidence was withheld on Southport. Had we been told very quickly, as we could have been, that in fact this fella had been born in the United Kingdom, that his parents were Rwandans, that he didn't come from an Islamist type background, had we been told he hadn't arrived by boat, I suggest to you that what happened that night in Southport would not have been of the same magnitude.
What a wild... That's wild. Okay.
Would you not agree?
I've got no idea.
Would you not agree?
That's a counterfactual.
Well, if you think,
what evidence do you have, Nigel Farage, that the police are
if you
misleading
think,
people?
I don't know.
Well, so why did you say it? Why did you say the truth about Southport was being withheld
from us? Well, then you tell me whether this man was on the suspect list or not. You don't know the answer to it. Don't we deserve to know it?
But that's not to say that people are lying.
To know it?
That's to say that we don't know. You don't know yet. So you could just wait rather than tell people.
Well,
that the police might be lying.
I've now waited nearly a week, and that question has still not been answered.
So what evidence did you? Back to my question. You have no evidence that the police are withholding
utterly
information.
legitimate to ask questions.
It is
utterly legitimate, and that is all that I did.
But not having an answer and filling the silence with "they're lying to you" is not legitimate.
I don't believe we're being told the full truth yet about this person. I want to know. I think we all want to know.
So police are lying.
I didn't say that. Not telling the truth is not the same as lying.
The truth about Southport was being withheld from us. Do you still think the truth is being withheld by the police from the people?
I still don't know who this man is.
Truth that you thought people already knew because you cited some reports saying that he come on a boat.
who this man is, and I repeat the point, had those questions been answered, far from stoking riots, it would have actually calmed them down considerably.
But you allowed it to be stoked because you cited the fake reports and you used the fake reports as a way to say the police are not.
I gave the police the opportunity to dampen down speculation. They should have done it, and I bet they regret not doing it.
Do you want to retract the comments and delete that video?
No, I want to know the truth.
You don't want to retract the comment that the police are lying to people?
I never said that.
The police aren't giving you the information.
I'm sorry. I've come in and have an honest conversation. Don't make it up. Don't twist it, because that's what other people are doing. And by the way, yes, you just have. You twisted.
Told people. I'm quoting
twisted the words.
You wondered whether the truth about Southport was being withheld from us.
We have a situation in this country, right, where ever since Black Lives Matter, there is increasing distrust of the police in this sense. The idea that there's two-tier policing is now widespread in society. That is something that very urgently needs to be dealt with.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Very urgently.
But I just have to issue this clarification because you have said in the course of the conversation something that could be sub judice, and we just need to be very careful about the charge that has been laid against this person.
Police in this sense. The idea that there's two-tier policing is now widespread in society. That is something that very urgently needs to be dealt with.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Very urgently.
But I just have to issue this clarification because you have said in the course of the conversation something that could be sub judice, and we just need to be very careful about the charge that has been laid against this person. I think this has been described in the course of it. So we pause there to be very careful about what we're going to say about an open case. What is...
Were there BLM riots in UK? I think there were BLM riots all over the world, but there were really bad riots, I think, with respect to this thing that happened.
Two-tier policing.
Two-tier policing is you deal with different types of protests and different types of crime in different ways. One of the classic cases is stop and search. Stop and search. By the way, a policy that is wildly popular across the country. Doesn't matter whether people are on the left or the right of politics. The idea that the police should randomly stop and search people for knives in the streets is extraordinarily popular whenever I say it.
You have said that in Hare Hills in Leeds, police ran away and allowed a riot. Is that two-tier policing?
I think if you look at the way the police dealt with the Hare Hills protests,
the rights of British people to not be stopped and frisked or whatever don't exist. So I think, like in the United States, you don't have to say shit to a cop or whatever. But I think in the UK, but it's also like generally accepted. People, like cops, can walk up to you and ask you for your the flimsy paper ID, YE, or whatever. I don't know the fuck, whatever. They can get your ID card. I think you have to give it to them or something. It's not it's called stop and search or whatever for whatever the fuck. I don't think they need like a probable cause standard or any bullshit.
And dealt with the Southport protests, I think any fair-minded person would think there were two different police reactions. Now, let me be clear.
But aren't they because two different incidents? They're two different types of protests.
Well, yeah, but they're both violent. They both set fire to things. They both threaten property. They both threaten law and order. And so I mean, look, I'll tell you something. The perception of two-tier policing is very, very dangerous indeed. And by the way, we've got a situation now with violent riots going on. By far the worst we've seen since 2011. But actually, I think 2011 was a mass outbreak of criminality, opportunistic criminality. This is different.
Yep.
These are two sides with deeply entrenched positions.
Back to two-tier policing.
All right.
What you're really saying is not that there are different operational decisions appropriate to the severity of the situation that police.
Yes, I am saying that.
But that's what policing is, isn't it? Here's Graham Wetton, who spent 30 years in frontline public order roles with the Met. Of course, there are tiers in police response. I'm quoting because you make operational decisions appropriate to the severity of the situation, but there are not tiers based on preference or favouritism.
Well, I tell you something. Look, what we know are the police forces in this country are terrified of being accused of being racist, and therefore police things differently. And stop and search, which I began with a moment ago, is a classic example of where we've downplayed stop and search in areas with higher black proportions of the community. By the way, despite the fact the majority of those that die of knife crime are black people themselves.
But the operationalising of police decisions is something that the police have to answer for. They need to be accountable for those decisions. But it's not two tiers based on the colour of someone's skin or the favouritism the police might show one type of community, is it? We agree.
No, we don't agree.
Right.
No, I think we use a softer approach on some groups than others.
Okay. And an example for that is?
Well, I think Black Lives Matter, the way that was policed, is very interesting. I mean, people tearing down statues and chucking them in the dock with police just standing by and watching. And I think if you contrast the policing...
Those people were arrested.
Yes, and never even got a criminal charge.
Because the jury
just extraordinarily.
But that's what the jury is there for.
The police made no attempt to stop that from happening. We even saw Winston Churchill's statue being defaced. We saw the cenotaph being abused. All of those things happened with the police literally just watching. And I tell you something. Out there in the country, there is a white...
Somebody just said that it has to be on reasonable grounds. And they linked something and it says, a police officer has powers to stop and search you if they have reasonable grounds to suspect you're carrying illegal drugs, a weapon, stolen property, something which could be used to commit a crime, such as a crowbar. You can only be stopped and searched without reasonable grounds if it has been approved by a senior police officer. This can happen if it's suspected that serious violence could take place, you're carrying a weapon or have used one, or you're in a specific location or area. So is that the same probable cause standard, or I can't tell if you're a British person, if you're just an American. Sometimes you guys will like Google a thing and you immediately, like if I have a question or if I say something I'm not sure and you Google a thing and you find the very first link you immediately come to and then you just throw it in chat. And sometimes you don't even read the link. I don't know if that happened here or not, but sometimes you guys do that. It's fucking drives me crazy, but I don't know if that's the same as the probable cause standard or whatever else. But your IP address is from the UK, so I'm going to assume you know what you're talking about. You better, motherfucker. Okay.
Widespread perception that we have two-tier policing.
Now, might be the perception.
Well, perception and reality.
I'm going to give you this quote from Graham Wetton, who spent 30 years doing the job you're telling him how to do. The Met used on BLM policing. The Met used an advance of the mounted branch, one of their most impactful tactics, which I've only seen deployed a couple of times in my whole career, and not at any of the incidents in the last week. So there's an argument to say the Met went in quite hard in some forms on the BLM protest.
I'm sorry,
in a way that they didn't do in the last week.
They took the knee on the street. You know, we can argue over fine points, but here is the real point. At no point in the last week or in the previous 30 years have I ever encouraged the use of violence. Have I ever encouraged the use of anti-democratic means? And yet, you know, you get the internet and people saying things on the internet. We have senior Labour politicians like Andy MacDonald saying, I wanted the riots to happen. We have former Conservative MPs like Anna Soubry saying that I orchestrated the riots. We have LBC presenters like James O'Brien calling them the Farage riots. I have had nothing to do with any form of street violence now or at any point in my career. And this level of incitement to violence against me, which is utterly baseless, has led to a huge increase in my security uptick.
Well, I'm sorry to hear
No. You as a broadcaster too have that responsibility. LBC as a broadcaster have that responsibility. You're splitting hairs.
I'm not splitting hairs, Nigel.
You are splitting hairs.
I'm keeping you to the words that you use.
I am telling you that in this country there is a widespread perception of two-tier policing.
But you're also in a position to give them the reality, Nigel.
Yes,
and the reality might be very different from their perception.
No, I personally believe that we police different communities according to their racial backgrounds in different ways, and I want it to end.
And the examples of that are?
The examples of that are, for the third time,
the Black Lives Matter protest?
For the third time, the way that stop and search is implemented, or, frankly, not implemented.
There are people being arrested, obviously, for what they did in protesting on the streets. There are people being arrested for whipping up racial hatred online, for encouraging violence online. Do you worry that based on what you've said in the last few days, you might get a knock on the door from the police?
No.
You don't think that's going to come your way?
What, for asking the truth about the perpetrator of a heinous crime?
For suggesting that the police are lying without any evidence?
I didn't say they lied. You've done that. That's the third time you've done that, and you are irresponsible and wrong to do so. You are irresponsible and wrong to do so.
I can give you the quote again, Nigel. That you said, the truth about Southport was being withheld from us.
I didn't call them. I didn't say they were lying.
So they're deliberately not giving people the truth.
That's a very different thing to lying. So don't use that word again, please. You've done it 3 times and you're wrong.
In Hare Hills, you said the police ran away and allowed a riot. The police say they pulled back temporarily as they had become...
What's the difference?
As they had become...
What, can somebody give me this Farage quote? I want to hear this full thing in context. Can somebody... Is there a video of this, or was it a tweet or a fucking Instagram video, or what? Oh, good one.
The sole target of those intent on causing trouble, and then went on to arrest people. Again, coming back to Mr. Wetton's comment, who did the job for 30 years, on Hare Hills, it started out looking like a standard call that many officers will go to, an incident at an address with social services trying to remove children, and then it blew up with officers coming under attack, and because of how quickly it escalated, withdrawal is the best tactic. Why do you think you can tell police how best to do their job?
All I can do is what all of us do, is to look at the facts before us, the evidence before us, as we see it, and draw conclusions. And I draw the conclusion.
A third young girl has died as a result of the... Well, it's pretty horrendous. The third young girl has died as a result of the stabbings yesterday in Southport.
Yesterday.
I obviously join everybody in my horror at what has happened. I know the Prime Minister went to lay flowers and was heckled, and it shows you how unhappy the public are with the state of law and order in our country. I have to say there are 1 or 2 questions. Was this guy being monitored by the security services? Some reports say he was, others less sure.
Some reports.
The police say it's a non-terror incident. Just as they said the stabbing of an Army Lieutenant Colonel in uniform on the streets of Kent the other day was a non-terror incident. I just wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it is a fair and legitimate question. What I do know is something is going horribly wrong in our once beautiful country.
Okay.
Conclusion that we have 2-tier policing. And
you might be wrong.
Mr. Weston, I'm always prepared to accept that I'm wrong, which is why perhaps a bit more engagement the other way from the police might be useful. You see, when Sir Mark Rowley, the boss of the Metropolitan Police, is asked this very question by a reporter yesterday, all he does is manhandle the microphone away, which leads to that suspicion becoming even deeper. Tom, we've got these riots going on. We've had horrendous standoffs, appalling behaviour, setting fire to hotels, things that are almost unimaginably ghastly. On the other side, we've had Muslim intimidation of LBC reporters, amongst others. All right? So there are some terrible things happening on both sides, albeit the thuggery of...
But we don't know that they're Muslim.
Well, look, we know the communities they come from. We know the face masks they're wearing. I think we know.
No, it was terrible.
I think we know. I think we know it's pretty bad. All right. And when they're shouting, free Gaza and genocide, I think it's a fair bet to say who they are. Here's my real big point. Okay, we can quell the riots. The police can do whatever they need to do. We can bring the army in. We can do whatever. Unless we solve what's really at the heart of this problem, our danger is we become like France, where these things don't go away. They flare up every 3 months, 6 months, every year. There are, right at the heart of this, some very, very fundamental concerns about societal breakdown in our country. And there is no doubt that we have to address issues like uncontrolled mass immigration and division of our communities. And what I'm looking for is a long-term solution, not just a short-term.
I don't know what any of that has got to do with Southport.
Don't you?
No, because the man charged was born in Cardiff.
Do you know what? You want to get out more. You want to get out more. You want to get out more.
The man charged was born in Cardiff.
Well, why didn't they tell people that? And then maybe the riots would not have been that bad.
You jumped to conclusions,
They did not
Nigel.
tell people.
You jumped to conclusions based on having looked at Andrew Tate's Twitter feed or
They did
whatever.
not tell people before those riots sparked who he was and where he came from. And if they'd done that, this would have been far less serious.
But do you think you could have said in those circumstances, we don't know yet who this person is, so let's not jump to conclusions, let's wait and see and condemn how awful the attack was?
All I could
option
have said, tell us the truth, and maybe this will calm down, which is what I did.
The people rioting, some of them look to you. They see you as someone who espouses their worldview, their politics. Would you speak to them directly now to tell them to stop?
As I've done repeatedly over the last week. There is the reason that we fight, and I've fought for 30 years in European elections, by-elections, general elections, is I believe that parliamentary democracy is the way we stop violence overtaking our society. So I condemn all acts of political violence, whoever they're committed by. And let me tell you, the idea that devotees of some of these extreme figures are fans of mine is a long way from the truth.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, was on LBC the other day, and she was asked about the responsibility that politicians have in these moments. She says, we have a responsibility to hold the community together and say, let's get the facts, and then let's look at what the actual solutions are and what we can do about the horrific situation that we find ourselves in, not to stir up this fake news online. But that is in part what you did.
No,
Whether
it's
knowingly
not.
or
No,
accidentally,
that's
you lent
completely-
into some of the fake news.
I asked for the fake news to be knocked down. I asked for the truth to be told. And Angela Rayner, you
You
talk
said
about...
our country is being destroyed. By who?
Oh, yes, literally, our communities are being separated and destroyed.
By who?
I think the political process, and by the way, it may be Labour in government, but the Conservatives are far more responsible. I think the fracturing of society because of mass immigration is one of the most serious social deconstructions we've ever seen in the history of these islands. And I honestly, I think there is a way we can deal with it. We won't solve it overnight, but we have to try.
So when Elon Musk says that civil war is inevitable, do you agree with him?
I pray that he's wrong.
Do you agree with him?
I pray that he's wrong.
So you do disagree with him?
No, I don't agree with him.
No, so you disagree with him?
I pray that he's wrong. How much stronger can I put it? Yes, social deconstructions we've ever seen in the history of these islands. And I honestly, I think there is a way we can deal with it. We won't solve it overnight, but we have to try.
So when Elon Musk says that civil war is inevitable, do you agree with him?
I pray that he's wrong.
Do you agree with him?
I pray that he's wrong.
So you do disagree with him?
No, I don't agree with him.
No, so you disagree with him?
I pray that he's wrong. How much stronger can I put it to you? I pray that he's wrong. Because you see, I see France, I see Paris, I see Marseille, and they are cities that are in a sort of permanent state of truce, and that truce breaks occasionally, and horrendous riots happen, and there is no prospect in those big French cities of any of this improving. I don't want us to go down that route. I really do not.
Wow. Thank you very much indeed for coming
Thank
in. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK and the Reform MP for Clacton.
So was was this guy ever a terrorist or what the fuck? What was the motivation for this eventually discovered to be? Was there motivation or did anything come out about it? Mental illness? Where do you see that? Let's see, he was born in Cardiff, Wales, to Alphonse Ruda Kobana and Letitia Muzairi, Jesus, who are evangelical Christian Tutsis, originally from Rwanda and who moved to the UK in 2002. One is a British citizen and has an older brother. Oh, the kid is a British citizen. I don't know. Our family lived in the Thornhill area of Cardiff before moving to the Southport area in 2013. He was mentally ill, but also happened to be a Muslim. Wait, was he a Muslim? It says his parents were Christian. Did he become Muslim? First became known to officials in 2019, initially due to anxiety and social isolation, but then due to increasing suspicious behavior on October 4, 2019, aged 13 in a year 9. He contacted Childline and asked, what should I do if I want to kill somebody? And in the following days, explained he wanted to kill someone who was bullying him at school. Jesus. The incident was referred to the police, who visited him shortly afterwards. Ruda Kubana had been temporarily excluded from school by this point, and he was expelled after he disclosed that he had taken a knife to school on about 10 occasions. From October 17, 2019, Ruda Kubana attended the Acorn School in Ormskirk, a specialist education center. During his admission meeting, Ruda Kubana was asked why he had taken a knife into his previous school, to which he replied to use it. In November 2019, he was referred to the Anti-Extremism Prevent Scheme for researching school shootings during an IT class, the first of what would eventually be 3 referrals over the following 18 months. On December 11, 2019, Ruda Kubana booked a taxi to take him back to Range High, where he threatened pupils and teachers with a hockey stick on which he had written their names. He struck one pupil with a hockey stick, breaking their wrist. When the police arrived, a knife was found in Ruda Kubana's backpack. Am I making this up? I thought in Bongerland, if you have a knife, it's like illegal or some shit. Or like, is it over a certain size, or if you're outside of a fucking kitchen, or what? His mugshot. Jesus. That's a villain. What the fuck? Okay. Banned from the premises, and instead sent him to schoolwork to complete at home, which he failed to do. Was diagnosed with autism in February of 2021. He was referred to Prevent twice more. once in February for uploading 2 images of Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi to Instagram. And again in April after a teacher noticed that he had left 2 internet tabs open researching the London Bridge terror attacks on his school computer during a lesson. Police were involved with Ruda Cubana multiple times over the following year due to various incidents, once in November 2021, where he kicked his father and damaged his car in an argument, and then in March of 2022, where his mother reported him missing before a bus driver called the police on him for failing to pay his fare, and again in May of 2022, in an argument where he was denied access to a computer. He wore an outfit July 2024 on the 22nd, 1 week before the attack. Booked a taxi to a high school. Wore a green hoodie and a surgical mask. However, his father spotted him and pleaded with the taxi driver not to take him to his former school. Jesus Christ. All right, well, this kid is like a super fucking school shooter material. Or at least you don't have guns, I guess. Andy had fucking Ryson. He had a PDF copy of a military study of an Al-Qaeda training manual. What year was this? Did ISIS not make training manuals? I feel like you're using dated material. Just kidding. Video games. Watched graphic videos of murders and was absolutely obsessed with violence and genocide, including the Rwandan genocide, Adolf Hitler, and Genghis Khan on his devices, where found media relating to violent themes such as the Muammar Rebellion, clan cleansing in Somalia. Hey, wait a second. What the fuck did I say about this shit a while ago? That, I feel like we've had a spring of weird shootings, killings, mass murders in the U.S., where, like one was trans and one was, against like Charlie Kirk, and you just have these like scattered incidents, but there is like a small unifying thing for a lot of these that nobody ever really talks about, and it's like really young people who seem to be getting into a very weird headspace because of consuming very weird shit online, and I feel like nobody ever really talks about that much. This kid sounds like he was going to fucking watch people die every day after school, and was like on the fucking school shooter path, I guess when he was what, 13? Jesus. What was the first incident? He contacted Childline when he was 13 years old and asked, what should I do if I want to kill somebody? God damn. Well, On May 8th, 2025, Ruda Cubana is alleged to have attacked a prison officer. It was reported that he had boiled water using a kettle in his cell. You're that addicted to tea, even your prisoners can do it in their cell? Is that real? And threw it over the officer through the hatch in his cell door. He was taken to the hospital as a precautionary measure and was discharged on the same day. Jesus. Can I see anything about the claims of the shooter, or I'm sorry, the claims of the, I'm so America brained, the claims of the stabber that were circulating online like in the days after, like July 29th, 30th, 31st, assuming there's a July 31st. Like, how strong were the claims that he was a Muslim asylum seeker and all this shit? Damn. I remember feeling at the time this was kind of fucked up because people were spreading misinformation, but I hadn't dug into that much. But they were really off on this. Jesus. Damn. Oh, man. Here's a Guardian article about it. An account called Europe Invasion, okay, known to publish anti-immigrant and Islamophobic content, posted on X at 1:49 p.m. Soon after news of the attack emerged, the suspect was alleged to be a Muslim immigrant. Are these tweets still up at all, or are they gone? They deleted most of them? Ooh, did Constantine say anything about this? Did he speculate on this at all? Does anybody know? Damn. What is Channel 3 now? 17-year-old Ali al-Shakati from Banks has been arrested in connection with the Southport stabbings and is currently in police custody. Ali al-Shakati was on the MI6 watch list and known to Liverpool Mental Health Services. Review what these people were arguing.
There were riots.
Destiny crashes Lawrence Heather's panel to confront panelists on UK riots. Uh-oh. No, not our queen. We can't besmirch her by looking at anything she has to say about immigrants. Hearing Destiny pronounce Cardiff as Cardiff. Listen, I've been there. I don't give a fuck. You're fuck Bongerland. I will call it Cardiff. Cardiff? It even looks and sounds retarded, okay? Another tweet. This is the man from Cardiff that murdered little girls straight off a boat. Wait, is this just a random fucking is this just a random person? This is not the man that killed / attacked the children and adults in Southport. This image is of Kasonga Mobuto, who was arrested in Ireland in 2023 for a random knife attack at Dublin Airport. Okay. Yeah, this guy 17. Maybe he did crack for a long time. 4.3 million views. God damn. Ship the lot BK. Does that mean back? Ship the lot back? Here he is. What a surprise. Our fellow hello, 17-year-old black child. Jesus. This was the 17-year-old boy? The riots had limited formal organization. Instead, rioters assembled around individual far-right social media personalities with the aid of far-right Telegram group chats affiliated with Active Club England, the Terrorgram Network, and football hooliganism firms. Groups involved in the riots included supporters of the defunct Islamophobic group English Defence League, including its former leader, Tommy Robinson, Members of the neo-Nazi hate group Patriotic Alternative and the fascist political party Britain First. The riots were also supported by the neo-Nazi organization British Movement and the far-right political party National Front. Rioters clashed with local Muslims and counter-protesters were mobilized by Stand Up to Racism and other anti-fascist, anti-racist groups. Blah, 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 blah. Well, what are you going to do? Wait, what is this? I really hope that the rumors I am hearing about what happened in Southport aren't true, because if they are, this will not end well. This is in November. What is this referencing? It's probably worse than what you're hearing. Everyone thinks it is one scandal or another, but it is not. It is scandal upon scandal upon scandal. This is, in fact, what I am hearing. The real story behind the Southport murders were these 3 little girls and how Keir Starmer played a critical role in it. His father is Alphonse Ruda Cubana. He is known and tried by the International Criminal Court for participation in the Rwandan genocide in the 90s. Is that true? Or... The link provides a searchable document. When searched, the name Starmer does not appear, and the Alphonse mentioned has a different surname. Yeah, I thought the Tutsis were the people killed, but maybe they were collaborators? I don't even know if this is... but okay. Fonzie's wanted in connection with the crimes committed here. This is a conspiracy theory? Okay. Who is the lawyer representing this war criminal wanted for genocide? None other than QC and the current Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer. Keir was the man who represented Alphonse and got his extradition removed and ensured his status and asylum in the UK. Keir was in The Guardian publicly advocating for this alongside benefit. Why? What would be the conspiracy? Why would you want to do that? So he personally escorted a warlord, African warlord criminal to the United Kingdom so that that guy could raise his future son to kill to kill little white girls in a squad? What? Why? This is why the UK government has completely suppressed this story and won't let any media or anyone talk about it, and have the police raid anyone talking about it.
To you right on Southport, all I can say to you right now is,
bro, these guys are the king of vague posters. He's the king he vague posts about everything, about his policies, about what he wants to do for the country, about what when he talks about fake news. Like, I feel like this guy's like the king vague poster.
I know a hell of a lot more than the British public know. A hell of a lot more. I've been completely silenced. I dared, the day after Southport, to do a video to say, can we please know who this man is? Was he known to the authorities? Why do I feel we're not being told the truth? The level of demonisation I came under for that from both front benches was astonishing, from media commentators. Demonisation on a level that I'd never even experienced. Now I'm told by the Speaker of the House of Commons, I can't ask questions about it in the House of Commons. Parliamentary privilege is out of the window. Even rumours today that the court case, which is due in January, every effort is being made to defer it. Right? Yeah, this is what's going on. We are witnessing.
Why is he doing this? Just, at least it's his left hand, I guess. I'm sorry. I'm so American brain. I just, why?
One of the biggest cover-ups we've ever seen in our lives. And I won't say any more than that. I genuinely would never wish to be in contempt of court. I have respect for our legal system. It's not perfect, but it's damn sight better than most of the rest of the world.
What? So did anything ever come out about all the stuff they knew about this? Or was this all just vague posting retarded shit? What is this? Page 43 of this. Racialized grooming gangs. Elon Musk X and the implication of Islamophobia in the UK. Page 43. Konstantin Kisin, host of the podcast Trigonometry, claimed that the issues had been covered up by the mainstream media through its stranglehold on information. Tommy Robinson made a similar allegation against the legacy media covering the sentencing of rioters in Rotherham. Robinson claimed that Sexual assault and racism had not been covered in the press, which is demonstrably untrue. Jack Montgomery, former deputy head of communications for the Leave EU campaign, made a similar claim, falsely alleging that the BBC had not covered the Rochdale grooming gang trial. Okay. The terms multiculturalism, political correctness have become dog whistles for the existence of persons of color, right alongside other contemporary terms like diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory, wokeness, and others. Okay. Oh, Constantine explicitly denied this conspiracy theory. Well, what did he, what was he hearing? I really hope that the rumors I'm hearing about what happened in Southport aren't true. Did he say? what the fuck? Hello? Okay, all right. The excuse that the Southport killer's jihadi links were not revealed to avoid prejudicing the investigation and trial does not seem to have been applied to the rioters who were tarred and feathered before they were even arrested. Strange that. But what jihadi links, though? Because he had the Al-Qaeda manual? But it sounds like the kid was looking up a whole bunch of fuck shit, no? Okay. Obviously, you don't know how much classified info conservatives get. This is referencing the Al-Qaeda handbook. Okay, well. Hutch Gigamad. How? I gave such a nice take earlier. I said that Hutch's position is understandable. I don't even think I attacked his position necessarily. I just said that I feel like we've moved on from conservatives playing in our liberal playing field. What is this? He hates your Batman analogy. Oh, well, then he's going to have to find a better analogy to fight back on. Good luck. You spiked his cortisol. In real life, I don't know what that ever looks like. That doesn't just become corrupt themselves. But it's hard to answer this question of what do you do when this person has a vice that is capable of defeating your virtue, and you don't have somebody authoring it.
But they're not defeating our virtue, though. This is what I mean.
Oh no, he's going to say, he keeps going back to this point. He's going to say they're not defeating it because they're losing at the polls and they're going to lose in the midterms. They've already won a huge amount, though. Like, them losing in the midterms is not the victory that we're looking for, right? It was never the victory we were looking for. Trump won the 2024 election with a popular vote. Winning, like, just to call that a victory, I just feel like is so, I don't agree. But I'm pretty sure that's what he's going to say. We're winning. The popularity and everything is in our favor right now.
Like, I feel like he is playing into the propaganda. He's trying to use the DOJ to go after his political enemies. How's that working out?
Well, he managed to get his attorney general to put a fake lawyer in to fabricate indictments against people. I mean, he was able to do that. The judges worked as like a backstop. But this is almost like a Ben Shapiro tier argument of like the guardrails are holding. My argument is not so much that like Trump is successfully executing on all of his desires. It's more that the Republican establishment around him is allowing it, and the American public, in my opinion, I would say, are largely indifferent to it. Now, I know that his popularity is low, and I know that he doesn't poll well around these issues like he did before, but in my mind, this would be a thing where it's like, oh, the polls should be like 96-4 against him. Like, I understand having big 20-point leads is nice, but like, this shouldn't be even remotely close. This should be like you just lost like 35 seats in the Senate type of shit. Not like, well, we took back the House and we're close in the Senate now. Like, I feel like that's the lost fight. I feel like that's the bad framing, in my opinion.
How the fuck is that working out? They've had cases laughed out of court for Comey, for Letitia James. Janine Pirro, who's now like a fucking prosecutor, and I don't even remember, announced that she's giving up on trying to find charges for the like seditious six. Like, Donald Trump is trying to do a lot of things, and he's being constrained by the girthy fucking cock of American liberal democracy.
He's being constrained barely, solely by just the judiciary. But our Congress should be restraining him as well. But they're not. There's no restraints whatsoever. And the administration should have some self-restraint, but they have none. And the American people are nowhere near as far against it as they need to be, I think is the issue. We can't be happy to just keep testing the guardrails over and over and over again.
And he's paying a political price for all of this corruption and overreach.
He's a lame duck.
Zabehi, thank you so much for 2 months. Appreciate it. Decepticon with the tier 1 membership. Maple Cobra with 83 months. McMitty with $10. Oh, I think I already got you for that. Domba. I don't think I got you for the tier 1 membership.
Okay. I don't have time for this right now. Targeted Roma families. Wait, what? Since Ballymena erupted in 3 nights of anti-migrant riots last month. Was this in response to the stabbing? This is in Northern Ireland. Last month. This is July of 2025. Wait, Ireland, Ballymena. Why am I even being linked this? Okay. Here's the woman that was prosecuted for inciting riots after Southport radicalized on Facebook. Woman 53 jailed over blow the mosque up Facebook post after Southport riots. Keyboard warrior Julie Sweeney sentenced to 15 months on busy day for rioting cases in England's courts. A 53-year-old woman who lived a quiet, sheltered life has been jailed for 15 months for posting a comment on Facebook which said, "Blow the mosque up with the adults in it." Well, at least she said adults and not children, right? She was part of a Facebook community group which had 5,100 members, responding to a photograph which showed a number of white and Asian people involved in the cleanup after disorder in Southport. She posted, "It's absolutely ridiculous. Don't protect the mosques. Blow the mosque up with the adults in it." God damn. He jailed her for 15 months, telling her, "You should have been looking at the news and media with horror like every right-minded person. Instead, you chose to take part in stirring up hatred. You had a big audience. You threatened a mosque. It truly was a terrible threat." Wait, what was her... She was part of a Facebook community group. Okay. The judge said so-called keyboard warriors like Sweeney have to learn to take responsibility for their language. She lives a quiet, sheltered life in Cheshire, like a cat, and has not troubled the courts in her long life. Wait, what is like how did the charges work in the UK? If I go over there, they can't like arrest me for some shit I posted on Twitter like a month ago, can they? Okay. Let me chew through this one real quick. Political backflow from Europe. The European discourse can be, for lack of a better term, America-brained. We hear stories of Black Lives Matter marches in countries without significant black populations or defendants demanding the First Amendment rights in countries without constitutions. Why shouldn't the opposite phenomenon exist? Europe is more populous than the US and looms large in the American imagination. Why shouldn't we find ourselves accidentally absorbing European ideas that don't make sense in the American context? In my post on baby boomers, I argued against claims that America keeps raising taxes on the young so it can award larger pensions to the old. In fact, Social Security payouts per person have become less generous over time, not more. Although total subsidies to the elderly are rising because of increasing longevity and health insurance costs. Several European readers wrote in to say that whether or not this is happening in America, it definitely happens in Europe. Am I going to care about this? The anti-boomer take has been imported in part from the EU, plus the UK, where the pension system is not the same. There is a lot of similar things in France that I could dig up, such as all attempts to tax benefits being defeated. Scott seems genuinely confused by the origin of a lot of the boomer hate, which is explicitly tied to European welfare systems and how they redistribute money away from young, middle-class earners into the pockets of the wealthiest generation, i.e. boomers, by means of pension transfers. If Scott had broadened his research horizon a bit, he would see that the average pension in France is now higher than the average salary, which is obviously an unjustifiable disaster, especially when old people are way less likely to rent at high prices or experience childcare expenses. So maybe this is one example of European issues leaking to a less appropriate American context. Are there any others? In Understanding America's New Right, Noah Smith asks why American conservatives are so interested in European affairs, especially in their immigration policy. He answers that conservative ideology centers around the idea of Western civilization. This is kind of him. A more paranoid analyst might make a similar argument around white identitarianism. Since Europe is the home of Western civilization, it is especially galling for it to be ravaged by immigration or whatever. This may be true, but I propose a simpler explanation. The American conservative narrative on immigration is mostly true in Europe, mostly false in America, and it is more pleasant to think about the places where your narrative is mostly true. The conservative narrative on immigration is, to put it uncomfortably bluntly, that immigrants are often parasites and criminals, as our news sources love to remind us. This is untrue in the American context. The average immigrant is less likely to commit welfare, or to claim welfare benefits, and less likely to commit crimes than the average native-born citizen. This is a vague, high-level claim. The answer can shift depending details of how you ask the question, and it is certainly not true of all immigrants or native subgroups. Still, taken as a vague, high-level claim, the news sources are right and the conservative narrative is wrong. In Europe, the situation is more complicated. There are still some ways of asking the question where you find immigrants collecting fewer benefits than natives. For example, because immigrants are young, natives are old, and pensions are a benefit. But there are also more options for asking the question in ways where, yes, immigrants are disproportionately on welfare. The European link between immigrants and crime is even stronger, especially if the conservatives are allowed to cherry-pick the most convincing European countries. Wait, hold on. New schizo, conspiracy, anti-vax just dropped. Declassified CIA files reveal chilling blueprint to manipulate Americans' minds through covert drugging with vaccines. Oh, shit. True. Have you read the triple lock problem in the UK in regards to pensions? No. But I've heard people bring it up a lot. What? The AI Scott Adams podcast? Oh my god, kill me. I do not consent to that ever being made of me. Fuck you guys. Wait, what is MS? Sorry. Member states of the European Union and extra EU immigrants. What does extra EU mean? Outside of the EU or? Mortal strike, multiple sclerosis. Thank you.
The context. Miss Lala.
The Rev Ice drama explained in 4-ish minutes. Don't ever. Jesus. I ain't got time for this shit. Jesus. It wouldn't surprise me if there was more propensity to drain welfare though in European states versus the U.S. I think I would just accept that as a default, just because their welfare is more generous than ours generally. This goes to 2021. Asylum seekers in Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. Where's the UK? Mm-hmm. Ministry of the Interior estimated that 67.5% of all offenses involving foreigners are committed by irregular residents, more than 2/3. With regard to this figure, it is important to highlight that irregular migrants are much more exposed to criminality as they live in illegality and are thus prevented from finding a regular job or accessing social security measures. According to a 2016 study, if we only consider regular residents, the criminality rate would seem to be analogous among foreigners and Italians. Why is that to compare? I'm just kidding. It's probably about Italy, I'm guessing. Tend to commit. It's worth noting that foreigners, both regular and irregular, tend to commit different types of offenses. They mainly commit offenses that are considered less serious, and this is reflected in the length of their sentences. So probably like some kind of fraud or whatever, as opposed to like violent crime or something, I guess. Okay. Obligatory.
Bring in Her Majesty. It's time to knight Mr. Farage. If you would like to kneel there.
Come on then. Don't hurt me. Well, thank you.
You are now Sir Nigel Farage. We're also making you Honorary British Ambassador to America and Honorary MP for South Planet because they didn't elect you for real. So arise, Sir Nigel.
Thank you very much. I'm honoured.
My mummy says you hate foreigners.
No, no, little girl. No. You're not supposed to say that. That's very naughty. That's it, everyone.
The Queen has to be non-political.
Nigel Farage has been knighted. That's the end of the show.
God damn. Not good. Josiah and Hutch are arguing again. What? Okay. Whew. Jesus. Okay. Did I have any other things that I wanted? Okay. Oil and stuff. Parliamentary sovereignty is a good meme. What is this fucking like British steel shit? Like, is it possible for the Brits to make their own steel? Is that even like realistically possible, or is that like a fucking pipe meme dream, or what? Smaller countries in the UK Still make steel. Yeah, but how much do they need? They don't have a license for that. I think it's nostalgia for one of the largest producers.
I think they're all looking at government
you see
decisions.
Gary Stevenson as a sort of pseudo-academic economist, or a...
I don't think he's pseudo-academic. I think he's literally an economist. That's his job.
What about, you mentioned... it's not his job. He's a city trader. He studied an undergraduate degree in economics.
Who aren't working for the government. I think they're all looking at government
you
decisions.
see Gary Stevenson as a sort of pseudo-academic economist.
Is he calling? Do you call Gary Jerry? Is that? Do bongers really do that? What?
Economist or a...
I don't think he's pseudo-academic. I think he's literally an economist. That's his job.
What about, you mentioned... it's not his job. He's a city trader. He studied an undergraduate degree in economics.
Right.
Okay, he's not a professional economist.
But I think if you do a degree in economics, it's fair to say you're an economist.
Where are the people with graduate
Wait, what? Is that how that works?
level degrees in economics that you're focusing on here? Where are the professors? Where are the people for whom this is their academic speciality?
So this underlines some of our conversation too. We're not in government right now. When you're in government, you have an entire civil service to go, here are our principles. Here's how we get to exact questions that Alistair's fairly asking me about what does the legislation look like and how do you make this happen? I think the point to do right now is to get the principles. Can I highlight something I think is interesting? So I did a debate the other night with BBC. I came off stage and a woman came over to me and it's a story I'm hearing lots. It was lovely. She said, my 4 kids are so happy with what you're saying. You're giving them hope again. They're feeling really excited. And I said to her, like your kids, what about you? And she was like, I think you're brilliant. I think you speak with compassion and values, but I'm not.
Wait, am I missing memes? Hold on. Uh-oh.
That is a possibility.
That's what don't you want to avoid?
Oh, no, not the paint document. Oh, did he finish watching my whole Batman thing?
Talked in the past about... This is a debate that I've had for years. I'm not entirely sure that I think the president of the United States, no matter who it is obligated to always obey the Supreme Court. Because and it's a notion called non-acquiescence. And it really has its genesis for all intents and purposes during the Civil War. Because President Lincoln disregarded a court order by Chief Justice Taney about habeas corpus. And his logic was at the time, like...
Hutch called you a pussy and dared you to call him. Link the clip or you're banned for 1 month. Virgil GC. Good luck.
If I obey this order, it's basically going to jeopardize the war effort. Do I have to forego my duty to take care that all the other laws be faithful for the sake of this one? And so it's something that's been debated by judicial scholars for centuries. It's something that, I absolutely think about because the entailment there is that the Supreme Court is the boss of Congress and the president, and it's actually intended to be the weakest of the 3 branches, weaker than the president, certainly weaker than Congress. So yes, this is something that...
Can you give me a real world application? Give me a hypothetical where you think it might be appropriate.
Yeah.
Like a realistic kind of real world
example,
application.
Bitch.
In the modern context.
Oh, I probably couldn't give you one offhand. I don't think I've ever called for non-acquiescence in like the modern time. I can't think of it as like a single example, but it's a philosophical notion that there are Supreme Court orders that, in theory, I think the president should just ignore. Like again, like civil war and things of that nature.
Well, I mean, tell me how it came up in the context of you talking about it recently.
There is one modern example. Well, no, because Peaceful and I talk about this shit all the time because we talk about balance of power, separation of powers, which branch is supposed to be dominant over the others. These are like common conversations that we've had, just like structural conversations about the system of government. But there's one example actually I can think of where I flirted with non-acquiescence, and that was during the Biden administration about the debt ceiling. Okay, so I can't remember all the details at the time. So it was like 2022, 2023 when we needed to lift the debt ceiling, and there was a potential government shutdown because the Republicans weren't going to, necessarily give the votes, and there was a lot of debate about whether or not Biden should mint $1 trillion coin or something like that in order to knock off enough debt so that we have some room before we hit the debt ceiling. And there was a debate about whether or not the Supreme Court would force President Biden to default on our debt. If you can't come to an agreement to satisfy the statutory obligations to raise or suspend the debt ceiling, if the Supreme Court said, we got to default on our debt because the president is still spending money that he's not congressionally authorized to use, maybe the president should just ignore them and continue to do it. You're going to have to try to order me to default on the national debt and trigger a global economic catastrophe. And Lawrence Tribe, Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe, one of the most reputable in the business, also made the case that the president might just want to ignore what the Supreme Court says.
Listen, you're my boy, and I love you.
This fucking saying, bro, needs to stop. It needs to stop.
Just want you to know that.
Appreciate that, buddy.
That's really online, buddy. That's really online.
Whoa.
You asked me for an example. What the hell does that mean?
You're talking about ignoring the Supreme Court, Josiah. This is a really online, not serious thing. Okay, like if you start advocating for, why would it stop there? At that point, if you just ignore the court that blatantly, that kind of way, why would you stop there? And at that point,
Hutch,
you are speaking.
Are you telling me there are no circumstances, under no circumstances, can the president of the United States or Congress disregard the Supreme Court? You can't think of any.
No, yes, but
then shut the fuck up. It's just a matter of where the line is wrong. So fuck your condescension, bro.
You invoked the Civil War.
Condescension.
Josiah, you invoked the Civil War.
Fuck it. You're right. So there's a line, Hutch.
Yes.
So again, fuck your holier than thou shit.
No,
fuck it. You asked me for a specific example where you asked me for a specific example outside of Civil War, and I answered.
We were kind of almost there, right? An insurrection is like the first part of a civil war, maybe J6, right? Maybe, yeah, maybe.
There was one that I was flirting with.
Josiah.
And by the way, it's not just me, asshole. Highly educated
There's a lot of
judicial
not serious
scholars
people.
also.
I understand. There's a lot
like
of
Lawrence Tribe, famous and not serious person.
It's not serious. You're not thinking about it. Like you invoked the last time that happened.
Oh my god.
You gotta let me talk, bro. I let you talk.
I answered your fucking question, and you're spending all this time condescending me. I answered you in good faith. I don't give a fuck if you don't think. I don't give a fuck if you don't think that it's a serious example.
Relax, calm
in
down,
good
calm
faith.
Down, I'm playing with you with banter. It's banter. Chill.
It's not. No, it's not banter.
I'm being half serious, but it is banter. But you're saying
I know you're being. I know you well enough to. I know you well enough to know when you're being serious, and you just admit I'm being half serious.
Let me respond to it then. Let me respond to it.
Wait a minute.
If you're
just going to condescend me, no, thank you.
What? Are you pulling out of the conversation then? I won't condescend you. I will be so nice and civil.
Then proceed.
Okay. You brought up the last time that this happened, non-acquiescence, in the context of a civil war. Obviously, that is a totally different calculation. If we are at the point where we're in a civil war, then dude, so many, that's like all bets are off. Like, you try to preserve the system as much as you can, and you at the same time you're in a war with people that want to take it over and maybe do like a fascist takeover and do like a coup or whatever and like basically destroy the system. At that point, you have to make all kinds of compromises. I mean, I'm like, of course, like there were illiberal things that happened when we were fighting the Civil War, but we're not there right now. We are like 20 steps removed from that. And I just want to ask you if you think that it's a realistic solution to just start ignoring the Supreme Court. And I'm just asking you, like, do you not think at that point that the right wing in this country are gonna take up arms and it's just on like Donkey Kong at that point, right?
That is a possibility.
That's what don't you want to avoid that? Don't you want to avoid that, bro?
Do you remember how this topic just came up?
Oh no.
You asked me about me saying that you were too online.
Right. So I asked you a question, a very specific question. You said, well, it's based off something I heard from Pisco about the Supreme Court. And I said, well, there is this notion called non-acquiescence, and it's happened in the past. It's just very, very rare. And it's something that's being discussed and has been discussed for centuries by judicial scholars. And I gave you a specific example. Then you wanted to focus on non-acquiescence. And you said, well, why would you be talking about that with Pisco? Well, again, Pisco and I have conversations, like broad, abstract conversations about separation of powers and checks and balances all the time.
Right.
And then when you ask me for what non-Civil War example could I possibly conceive of where non-acquiescence might be permissible, I said, I remembered the one about the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
Because if we defaulted on our debt, it would trigger a domestic and global economic catastrophe that would probably make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park, which is why at the time there were judicial scholars like Lawrence Tribe and others suggesting that maybe if the president forces the issue to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says you need to default on the debt because you didn't statutorily meet the terms of raising or suspending the debt ceiling, that the president, for the sake of the domestic and global economy, should just give the court the finger and keep spending money to pay off the debt. That I said that was an example where, of course, I considered it. And you responded with the most unhinged, condescending rant. How dare you even think in such a scenario about violating or disregarding the Supreme Court? And if we did it, wouldn't the right, raise up in rebellion? I'm not suggesting that that is something that any president, Democrat or Republican, invoke on the regular, but I can imagine some extraordinary crisis, like either a civil war or a domestic or global economic catastrophe, where the court could probably be ignored for the greater good. Now, having reiterated that all again, do you really think that responding the way you did was appropriate?
Listen, the context. Listen, what you're saying right now is reasonable to me, okay? If you're helping...
Well, then just deal with that.
Josiah, let me talk, okay? The context of all of this was, I was in a debate last night with Rashad, and Pisco started to do the thing that he does with me, where he tries to trap me in hypocrisy or something like that. He brought you into this, and he said, Josiah's been talking about, like, ignoring the court. That's what he said to me. So that was my impression, right? That's what I'm thinking, right? And so you come in and then you talk about the Civil War, and then you mention this other thing. I'm still in my head thinking, like, this is not the only application that it's come up. I mean, are there other times where you've suggested that possibly Biden should have ignored the Supreme Court, or the next Democratic president should possibly ignore the Supreme Court? Was that the only time it came up?
I can't think of any other example where I told Pisco, like a specific example where the court should be ignored.
Okay, then I had the wrong impression then, bro.
But here's the frustration. I gave you all that information before you responded the way you did. And this is actually part of the problem, right? Which is going back to my initial question about where you said where I'm too online. And I've said this to you before, and wait a minute, I've said this to you before, and I've said this to you in multiple conversations before, including the one earlier today, where you and I can just exchange straw men about one another if you want.
No, I'm glad you clarified.
Okay.
Listen, I'm glad you
Okay.
clarified.
I appreciate that.
Hang on, I'm giving you like insight into why I was thinking this. The reason I said anything online, I was responding to Pisco said, you are quote, and I think I quote here, he said Josiah is starting to talk about like possibly ignoring the Supreme Court. But that's what I'm working off of, bro. That's what's in my head. And so in that context, I hear that and I'm like, that's way too online if we're just casually talking about ignoring the Supreme Court. If you're talking about a potential hypothetical where it's, like the global meltdown of the entire like interconnected economy, if it's like avoiding that, then it's the same like fucking trolley problem, harm reduction principle. I would totally be willing to entertain. But again, my impression of where you were at and you being too online. Wait, can you acknowledge that though? If I'm told.
No, I can't. No, respectfully, I can't. I understand you having that impression going in, but then when you asked the question the first time and I answered it, then whatever misapprehension you were under or implication you got from Pisco should have went out the fucking window.
No, come on, bro.
Yes, because Pisco didn't give you specific examples. Now, if you'll allow me to talk about the context that Pisco and I have talked about this in. So one of the issues that I wrestle with all the time in my version of the Supreme Court or my assessment of the Supreme Court is the fact that we don't have 3 co-equal branches. We have 3 coordinate branches. And the founders were very, very clear that the Supreme Court was intended to be the weakest of the branches, weaker than the president, and Congress was supposed to be stronger than both. It's supposed to be Congress, then the president, then the Supreme Court. And one of the things that I wrestle with all the time is, in practice, it's actually the Supreme Court on top, because the Supreme Court can effectively issue commands to the other 2 branches. And the expectation since Marbury versus Madison, and particularly since the Civil War, has been if the Supreme Court issues an order, the other 2 branches are obligated to obey. So the Supreme Court can strike down federal statute and can also strike down executive orders. Well, what options do the other 2 branches have? Well, Congress really can't do anything. Right? If Congress passes a law and it's signed into law by the president, so you have 2 branches versus 1. The Supreme Court reviews that law, passed by Congress, signed by the president, and says, oh, it's unconstitutional, we're striking it down. The only way to get around that at that point, other than getting the court to change its mind or packing the court or something, is to do a constitutional amendment. And we've had 27 constitutional amendments in 250 years out of literally more than 10,000 attempts. We have the hardest constitution to amend in the world. And the president by himself is effectively totally powerless against the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can tell the president no, and then under our current system, the president is obligated to obey. So as I've talked with Pisco multiple times, how is that, if anything, other than a total inversion of what the founders intended? If I can tell you no and you're obligated...
I don't know. I imagine Josiah has talked to more people and read more theory on this than I have, considering I've read basically no theory on it. But, like, in some ways, the Supreme Court can check the other 2 branches, but, like, couldn't the president... I guess the president can't really do anything. But Congress could pass a law regarding the Supreme Court, right? Because that's not like a check. Like, let's say the Supreme Court says, oh, you're not allowed to tariff. And then Congress is like, okay, well, we're going to pass a new law, so now he can tariff. Like, is that not... Or I mean, there's impeachment as well, right? And the president nominates judges, too. I don't know.
...obligated to obey. We're not equals. I'm your boss. So we've had that conversation. Yeah. But I've never, that I can think of, ever advocated, other than the debt ceiling situation, for a president to just simply disregard the Supreme Court. But philosophically, and in terms of checks and balances and separation of powers, yes, I think it's a really good fucking question, because the Supreme Court is ultimately, in our current system, the most powerful branch.
But so hang on. I just want to, hold on. I'm pulling up the transcript from the podcast last night. I just want to get exactly what was said, okay? If memory serves correctly, where is it? I do a Control F search for Josiah and it's not popping up. I don't know the exact timestamp.
Yeah, I remember what he said. I understand. So I think Pisco was a bit overstating my position.
All right.
But we have talked about the notion of non-acquiescence.
If they're captured enough, couldn't the Supreme Court just deem it unconstitutional? I mean, I guess, but then couldn't the president just disagree and just do whatever anyway? Like, if we're going to go on that route, no? What the fuck? Are these new mobs? What do they do?
And as far as the specifics, again, the only one I can think of ever publicly flirting with is the debt ceiling example. But again, Hutch, I love you. You're a friend. And that's part of the reason why I was like, I'm not playing. You really pissed me off. And the reason you really pissed me off is I understand if you had a certain conception of me based on what Pisco said, as soon as you asked the question, and I'm like, well, I can't think of a single example. And then I'm like, okay, well, here's this one specific modern example. And for you to react the way that you did, it was incredibly disrespectful and condescending, especially for a guy who doesn't like, you say all the time, you've said in conversations with me about how you feel that, you're being strawmanned or misrepresented. You ask people to, give the steel man of your impression. I feel you do that to me. And so that's why I came in here, actually just asked the question.
But you're steamrolling right now. Let me just say real quick. I had a totally different impression, and it was not my intention to strawman you. And it does look like I was mischaracterizing your perspective. And I wasn't doing that intentionally. I was working off of, in my head, again, I'm being told that the impression is that you're starting...
Yeah, we're having a lib and learn institutional crisis right now, okay? But they're resolving it.
...to talk about non-acquiescence in a more general sense. Okay, so that's where my head is at. And when you gave me your one specific answer, that doesn't like nullify what I heard. Like that wasn't you.
Wait, is this like the hottest Josiah's ever come in before, or have they ever like super fought on issues?
Saying this is the only time I would ever entertain that. I'm still in my head going off of what Pisco told me, which is that he's starting to talk about doing that. Okay, so if for misrepresenting anything you said, I apologize. I really do. I
appreciate that.
I don't
Next time you could just ask. Besides the debt ceiling crisis, Josiah, since I was given to believe that this is something you really want to do.
It was a throwaway line. That's all it was. It wasn't even. I have like strong disagreements with like Steven right now, and I said the same thing about him. But it's not. It is kind of like half banter. Okay, but I was not working off of it sounds like the reality of the situation. If you're saying that the whole non-acquiescence thing came up in the context of this particular thing, and the greater harm in this case could be like a global catastrophic meltdown, then sure, I would entertain that, and I would say that you're not too online, okay? I did not have the correct impression of your attitude with respect to non-acquiescence. And I agree with you on like 99% of your prescriptions when it comes to the courts.
Right, and so again, the only other time this has come up is just broad structural philosophical notions like are the other two branches obligated to obey the Supreme Court, and if so, doesn't that necessitate that the Supreme Court be the most powerful branch if they can tell the other two branches what to do, but neither of the other two branches can tell it what to do? Seems to be a vertical relationship and not a coordinated one.
I agree with the binding code of ethics. I agree with the binding code of ethics. I agree with term limits. I would be open to back in the courts. Like you know this about me. Right?
I know, and that's not. But I'm not talking about that. I'm trying to give you the context of when non-acquiescence has come up in conversations with Pisco. The only specific example are the Civil War example with President Lincoln and Chief Justice Taney, and the debt ceiling crisis under Biden. Okay. Now, that aside, as far as the two online part, because I remember you saying this, it wasn't even just about the Supreme Court, but again, about the strength of Trump. So that's actually, it wasn't even about the court, why I came in here. I came to ask you why you think I'm too online when it comes to Trump. And I'm curious if you could clarify a bit more. I'm trying to figure out where we're missing each other. You touched on it a bit earlier, but I had to go and record some video. So now that I have time, can you talk about it a bit more?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to reiterate again that I apologize for disrespecting you in that way.
For
mischaracterizing you, okay? I genuinely apologize for that. So I will for sure remember this conversation and make more of an effort to be respectful of you overall in my rhetoric, okay? But a lot of it is kind of like half friendly banter, but touching on some very real frustrations. But if I ever cross any kind of line like that, I do apologize. I do consider you like a friend. I respect you. I respect your work ethic. I like the relationship that we have offline, and I want to protect that friendship. So truly, I apologize.
No, likewise. Okay. I'm the same boat. So go ahead.
Okay. So in the context of what you're touching on, I think there's a big problem with not just like the populist left or like the typical lefties that I have a problem with. I think there's a bigger problem going on in terms of the way that people talk about Donald Trump. I think he is mischaracterized.
Is the constitutional debate going to be live streamed? I have no idea.
In a way to suggest that he is much stronger than in reality he actually is.
Project completely.
It's like I get frustrated because I feel like when we talk about Donald Trump in this way and describe him as having more power and having more influence and having more effectiveness as a leader than he actually does, that we are actually playing into his propaganda. Because his whole thing is, I'm so strong, I actually won California, it was just the illegal immigrants and that's the only reason. And I probably won Maine and it was all the voter fraud and everybody—
I won Minnesota three times.
Everybody respects me now, like I feel like so many people are adopting that framework and ignoring the fact that while his individual threats to the liberal order are real and alarming, and we should be vigilant about that, him and his overall political movement have been remarkably weak for the entirety of his time as president. I don't know if you watched the conversation that Brian Tyler Cohen had with Barack Obama, but he gets into a lot of the structural imbalances, and he talked about the asymmetry between the parties right now. We talk a lot about the
rest is boring. They don't fight anymore. How can you possibly know that? This is a live stream that I'm like 1 minute behind on. Are you reading the future?
Asymmetry in terms of media coverage. He talked about the structural asymmetry, and he also talked about our aspirational asymmetry. And I know we've talked about this a lot. He was talking about the fact that the things that Democrats want to do, like we want big healthcare reforms. We want, constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. We want to codify, protections for queer people and, codify protections for women to have abortions and these kinds of things. These are things that require consensus. And more importantly, these are things that require 60 fucking votes in the Senate. The things that the Republicans want to do are things that they can largely do with executive power. I mean, and then you have tax cuts through budget reconciliation. Okay. Boom. You just knocked out 50% of what you promised. And it just doesn't require the same amount of consensus, the same amount of making that
sausage. Yeah, that's why I said for years, just for to piggyback off that, that's why I've said for years, Wick and others, when they say, the Republicans have a principled commitment to the filibuster. It's like, no, not really. They recognize the filibuster is more useful to them in place because it blocks the bulk of an ambitious Democratic agenda, whereas most of what they want to do, to your point, are tax cuts and judicial appointments, which you can use either reconciliation or with a simple majority vote.
Yes, so we talked about this. So the conversation with Rashad last night is touching on, it kind of intersects with what I'm talking about here. Because if it was correct, if it was true that Donald Trump has basically already ended our liberal democracy, that the guardrails are not there, that he's not constrained by the system. Say, for example, if we get to the midterms and he seizes voter machines, right? At that point, it is on like Donkey Kong and we're doing a civil war. That's what it's going to look like. I mean, just like similarly, I said that they wouldn't take it lying down if you started to ignore the Supreme Court or do what Rashad suggested, just arrest judges or whatever. The same thing is on our side, we're not going to take that lying down either. I mean, that is going to be a civil war at that point, right? But my whole thing is we are not there yet. And so the solutions that that he was suggesting last night would be necessary if the system had already fell. But that's not what's happening here. And the reality is that Donald Trump has been a spectacular failure. He has been an incredibly weak president. He has never been in a weaker position than he is right now. So why are we doing this thing where it's like, we need to start getting creative and we need to start like thinking about maybe like working outside of the liberal rule set? You know, me and IRI were pushing back like, what are we talking about?
What is this?
Fucking Spanberger and Mikey Sharrow won by 15 points. Just do what they did. Mamdani, you know, like came out of nowhere and made, not only won the mayorship, but now has like elevated his national profile to the point where I can see him being governor one day or senator one day, you know? Like just go, like do what they did, like borrow from their campaigns and focus on affordability and focus on Trump's corruption and focus on bringing prices down and these kinds of things. Why are we talking about like, we need to be prepared to, you know, throw Rupert Murdoch in prison and then, you know, dissolve the courts if they have a problem with that? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so again, I'm not proposing dissolving the courts. I definitely want to pack the fuck out of it and with all the binding codes of conduct that we talked about. So certainly I want to do things that are constitutionally permitted to change the composition and disposition of this court for, you know, a more pro-democracy and quite frankly pro-democrat posture, right? So I'm unambiguous about that. But even as far as like the Rupert Murdoch thing, it is interesting as far as Fox News is concerned because, you know, the Biden era FCC actually tabled certain investigations and probes into Fox News precisely because they had a very laissez-faire pro-First Amendment posture towards speech. And so they would table certain probes into like NBC and CBS, but also Fox News. They were fairly even-handed in that respect. Now we have a very different FCC under Brendan Carr, who will resurrect probes and complaints against CBS and NBC and, you know, networks that Trump hates, but he'll keep the Fox ones buried, right? So they've certainly weaponized the FCC, and I've said this in multiple videos I've done. You know, I'm not familiar enough with the law. And Pisco seemed skeptical that there was a colorable case to be made against Fox News, but I've heard other people say differently. But just, you can imagine that right after they paid the biggest defamation settlement in American history, $787 million, you could conceive of a Biden administration, even if it didn't come from President Biden himself, but whoever his FCC chair was at the time, you know, saying, you know what? They just paid the biggest defamation settlement in American history, signal boosting Trump's defamatory lies about the 2020 election. And that's not just like, it's not just like even run-of-the-mill defamation. Like that does go to the heart of American democracy. So we're going to use our FCC powers to launch certain probes and inquiries and investigations, stuff like that. I think you could make a colorable case for the FCC to have investigated Fox News.
But you'd be looking, but in that case, Josiah, you would be looking for something to investigate. Instead of something landing on your desk and then investigating it, you would be, you know, starting an investigation in search of a crime, right?
Well, no, what I'm saying is, again, I'm not familiar with the law there, and maybe there's absolutely no colorable case to be made, but I can imagine a timeline in the multiverse, given that was, you know, public news at the time. It's not like you had to go searching for it, right? It was a high-profile story about that defamation settlement, that the FCC would be aware of that. And I mean, given the standards and practices and how they're supposed to regulate the conduct of, you know, people of agencies and networks under the FCC's remit, I could see a case. What I'm saying is I would not immediately dismiss a case brought by the Biden FCC against Fox News following the Dominion lawsuit. I could easily conceive in the abstract. But maybe an FCC chair would be like, hey, Josiah, I know that sounds like there's a relationship here, but in fact, no, there's nothing that Fox did under in the Dominion case that comes even close to an FCC violation. Then in that case, I'm not proposing that the FCC should go digging around for a separate issue after Dominion to punish Fox for Dominion. Does that make sense? I could see that the Dominion facts could potentially violate FCC guidance and FCC rules. But it never happened because you know, the Biden FCC didn't want to touch Fox with a 10-foot pole. Like they actively dismissed probes against various networks, including Fox, because they had a very laissez-faire free speech posture.
I think this example gets at the core of the conflicts that you and I have had in the past, the arguments that you and I have had in the past, which is that you are more comfortable with
doing crazy shit.
Tactics. I mean, what you're describing, you're trying to dress it up and find some kind of like a legal rationale for it. But, you know, you are talking about launching an investigation in search of a crime. You are talking about politicizing the FCC. And before you say it, like, I understand, like, that's happening right now. But I want to make a different argument against it besides it being illiberal, because I think the merits of that argument are good. You should just not generally do.
Can you clarify something for me though? Because you said that I would be weaponizing the FCC. Can you make how so?
Because Josiah, you are not describing. You're not citing any statute that you think they violated. You're just assuming that they did something wrong, and therefore you're going to open the books and look into them. But what is that based on?
Well, wait a minute. I didn't call for them to open the books on Fox for the Dominion case. What I'm saying is, and I conceded this off the bat, that there may be no statute, which case I said repeatedly, and I'll say it again, if there was no violation of FCC rules by the Dominion conduct, then they shouldn't do anything. I'm saying, based on what we have seen from the Trump FCC about these like technical violations, like how, this network or that network may have.
Thoughts on the nerfs? I think all of them are good. I didn't know the Venator nerf was so hardcore. Or was it? Does it shoot slower, or was I hallucinating there? Also, I think the Wolfpack was definitely too strong. I think adding all the supply requirements for everything is probably good, but some people are molding, so fuck them.
Technically violated FCC guidance, and they're using it as a pretext to go after Jimmy Kimmel.
That's illiberal.
It's a fishing expedition.
Yes.
I'm saying if what Fox did with Dominion violated FCC guidance, then I do think it's fair game. Now,
of course.
If instead if instead what they're doing is we don't like what Fox did during Dominion and we can't get them on the facts of Dominion, so we need to go hunting for something else to hit them with to punish them for Dominion, I don't support that. That I agree would be an illiberal fishing expedition, but I do not agree that if, and that's the key word, if, that during the course of the Dominion case, Fox breached FCC guidance or FCC standards and practices, whatever it is, that the FCC probing that, I don't concede at all that that's illiberal or weaponization of the FCC.
But again,
do you agree or disagree?
But again, if that's the framing, then I don't disagree with that. Like if we lived in one of the universes in the multiverse where
hell yeah,
because of this trial and because of information that came out during the trial, or the trial that it was eventually settled, the lawsuit with Dominion thing. Like if we live in the infinite multiverse where the Biden FCC at the time became privy to information that implied some
trials because you got hotshot. I didn't even do my trials. Fuck trials.
Violation.
I'm waiting for them to rework that system.
Of a regulation or violation of the law or whatever. Then obviously that would be justified. But what I would not co-sign is being like, this case against Dominion sure does seem to show like some real fuckery from Fox News. Let's take a look at their books. But
that's not what I'm advocating for.
But if you're looking for a crime, that would be illiberal. But I want to make a different argument. I think a lot of the dialogue these days is about tit for tat, and so it's like, well, Donald Trump is doing it to us, so like we have to let them know that we're going to fight back and whatever. I'm not saying this is what you're saying. I think this is really kind of short-sighted and misguided and wrong, because when you look at what Donald Trump is doing right now with his FCC, they're losing that in the culture. They're losing that fight in the culture. They're losing that fight politically. They are paying a price for this overreach, for this corruption. Like, why do you think the Texas Senate is in play in 2026? Like, why do you think we are massacring
because they gerrymandered the fuck out of it, right?
This Republican Party right now, like all over the country. It's all death by 1,000 cuts. Like the public has lost confidence in this administration. They view this administration as corrupt about the Epstein stuff.
Only because the economy is not good right now, though. There's a world where somehow the economy is actually turning out okay, and all of the American public, or enough of them, signs off on this that we don't get any huge changes in House allotment or anything,
They see them trying to initiate a grand jury charges against Comey and Letitia.
Senators aren't. Oh wait, did he say the Texas Senate is in play? Do we feel like that's the case right now? Is that possible? I haven't heard that. That might be true. I just haven't heard it.
To James and failing. They say, there was just announced that Jeanine Pirro today is abandoning her efforts to try to find
against
some crime
the
for this.
Six.
Right. So like all of that adds up. All of this, the public is like, not everybody is super engaged
one
enough
hatch key?
to know about all this stuff happening, but all of it is hurting this administration. It's not helping them. And so you can argue that there's short-term gain for them for them being politically corrupt and weaponizing their agencies to go after political enemies. And
Beards? Oh my
I can
God.
understand the impulse to like want justice for that, or want retribution, or want some kind of like balancing kind of action from Democrats. But I'm just cautioning people to pause for a minute and just like look at this administration and ask, like, where is it getting them? Like, are they actually benefiting from this stuff? I don't want to emulate that. Like, I don't want Gavin Newsom to be a year in his presidency in, we get to like 2030. And, he's tried and failed like 5 times to get his AG to go after this person or that person or this person or that person. That's why I think it's important to preserve the independent nature of the DOJ and our agencies. We should not weaponize and politicize our agencies. It will not help us in the long run. It might give us short-term catharsis, but the tit-for-tat stuff, it's only going to hasten the demise of the republic and put us on a fast track to actual civil war, and it's going to hurt us politically. Donald Trump is about to start speaking in the... Oh, wait, no, he's not. Never mind. They're doing a sizzle.
I was about to say, I think he starts at 9 o'clock.
Lil bro, I'm just saying. No, I'm just kidding.
Invited into the chamber yet?
They're walking in slowly now. But like, do you understand my counter argument to the tit for tat thing? Like, do you understand like where I'm going for? Like, why I get very kind of gun shy about Gavin Newsom running on a platform of I'm going to direct AG to investigate Donald Trump.
Yeah, of course I do. You don't think it's necessary. You think that there's a risk of greater retaliation, that it would like a tit for tat would just lead to
I think it will hurt us.
A race to the bottom.
I think it will hurt. I think it will hurt us politically. It's not a question of if, it will hurt us politically if we do that.
Yeah, I'm not sold on that yet. I think it depends much on what the tit for tat would entail and what the campaign would look like. I agree with you that certain things like the textbook example that we used to talk about if Joe Manchin doesn't agree to a certain thing, I'm going to have the DOJ investigate his daughter. Like, yeah, I think that would be just politically disastrous. But I think
tit for tat within a liberal framework is good. Like, tit for tat means redistricting in California and redistricting in Virginia. I think not.
And it does mean prosecuting lawless behavior and stuff like that. So yeah, and anti-corruption measures and things of that nature. So again, I think it depends on precisely what is being discussed. So I understand your concern, and I've always understood your concern, and I do agree that it's a huge risk at a minimum. I still broadly support tit for tat of a certain type because I do think it's necessary. I think that the right in this country operates to the degree of ruthlessness that it does.
What would be other examples of tit for tat that you want to see? And I'll probably agree with you on a lot of these, right?
Yeah. I mean, you gave the example, gerrymandering in the absence of a national gerrymandering ban. That's one example.
I think we should. I think we should go beyond. We should go beyond tit for tat with the gerrymandering thing. Like, I think we should ruthlessly gerrymander and get like 10 extra seats if we can do that, because they had an opportunity to codify a ban on partisan gerrymandering. They didn't want to do that. They picked a fight. And so I think we have a moral obligation to like fight that fight as aggressively as possible. We should go beyond tit for tat on that respect, right?
Wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's probably the only way to, again, like incentivize them to come to the table to back a national gerrymandering ban. Again, expanding the courts is an example. I do think, again, public...
Wait, what the fuck is this? Hello? This is just his suck-off session?
Relentless investigations into not just Trump, but Trump's family, prime time, televised, none of this behind the scenes shit. I'm looking forward to that. And then, yeah, I do think prosecuting members of the Trump administration, once the Trump administration is over for corruption.
That shouldn't come from, I'm saying that should not come from a political party. That should come from prosecutors. That should come from the attorney general, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like I would argue that's a political process because you would either openly campaign on accountability or expressly campaign on appointing a.
You get 100K easy on which thing I could run. I still have a bunch of the snitch scanners. I don't know what events are coming up.
An attorney general who would pursue such an agenda. So you'd either, as we talked about before, you would either be very open about it, very publicly, supporting prosecutions, or you would keep your mouth shut, but knowingly pick a person in a political process that you would expect would do the things that I'm talking about. So I do think it's political. That's what I said. It just depends on how you package it, depends on how you go about it. But I do think that sort of tit for tat is necessary. Let me put it like this. If Trump pardons everybody out the door, which I think that's extremely likely, I would be shocked if he didn't. Although, he didn't pardon himself on the way out the door in term 1. So he was surprisingly restrained. He pardoned like Manafort and a bunch of others. But I imagine, the incentives are much more different, or much more supporting of a mass pardon. I think we'll be in deep shit. If that's the case, because all that does is set the standard at that point, because you can't really do anything about a pardon. The only thing I can think of that you could do about a pardon are two options. You could maybe get a constitutional amendment, maybe, but for all the reasons I just explained, I think that would be a challenge because you would need supermajorities in both chambers and then 3/4 of the states to ratify, and I'm not sure we could even get those margins to curb a corrupt pardon tool.
I mean, it might take 40 years, Josiah. That's the point.
Yeah,
it might take 40 years. It might take 50 years. It might take 100 years, right?
Yeah, so there's that, and then maybe the only other thing you could do is, again, by packing the court with non-conservative justices, that if there's any sort of legal challenges to Trump pardoning himself or others, that they would invalidate the pardon. Those are the only workarounds. Like that, the pardon is kind of a skeleton key, right, to lawlessness, and you combine that with presidential immunity. It's basically a get out of jail free card, right? And I think if he invokes that, and there's no meaningful way to address it, like there's no punishment, there's no accountability for him or his family or the people he pardons in his administration on his way out the door. When I say that we're in deep shit, I think that at that point the race to the bottom will continue to accelerate because that sends a signal to other corrupt politicians, particularly corrupt Republicans, that all you have to do between presidential immunity and pardons is just get to the damn office in the first place. And then for 4 to 8 years, man, they can go ham. They can have meme coins, shit coins, stable coins, deals with other countries. And between presidential immunity and the pardon tool, they can get away with fucking murder,
Okay, so what happens then? I mean, like, are you proposing something if he pardons everybody? Or
Hell yeah, he is.
Short of, that's what I'm saying. I don't know where we go from there, and that's increasingly likely because, again, if he pardons everybody, there's no way to criminally prosecute them for the behavior he pardoned them for.
That might happen.
And no, of course, yeah, Jesus, I think that's increasingly likely. And that's why I can't speak for Stephen or Pisco or Rashad or other people, but I can tell you that is part of the reason why I'm so cynical, because I don't know how this country moves on from that. Because it's not just that Trump would get away with murder. It's, again, what it incentivizes for future Republicans.
I mean, I think, listen, we need to be comfortable not knowing what the future holds.
No,
we need to be comfortable being, knowing that there are potentially dark paths ahead. But I think it's really important that we stay in the present and make as good a decisions as we possibly can in the moment. And if we start making decisions that I consider to be bad, or I'm defining bad in this respect as illiberal, I think those are bad decisions. Those bad decisions will pile up and then continue to pile up, and eventually I think the whole house of cards comes crashing down. So like I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it is protecting us against my worst case scenario if we start to go down this like illiberal path. But I'm also saying that recognizing that there may come a day where all bets are off and it's on like Donkey Kong and we're doing a civil war. I mean, I would never tell you like just accept the if we were really sliding towards a fascist takeover, if he seizes voter machines, or if he tries to dissolve the Congress, or does a military coup, that's a really tough situation. Do I immigrate? Do I Minecraft myself? Do I take out my Colt Anaconda 44 and we're in a different kind of situation there. But I think at every step of the way we need to stay present and make good decisions. And generally speaking, Donald Trump has personally enriched himself, no doubt, through this insane government corruption, especially with like the meme coin and everything.
$1 to $5 billion in just 1 year.
In my mind, I am preparing myself for the possibility that he never faces accountability for that. He may die a rich man, having never seen the inside of a prison cell. That's possible.
I guess I'm with you. It's not just possible. I would say at this point, if you held that anaconda to my temple and forced me to bet, I would bet that on balance of probability it's likely to happen. But the thing is, as much as that would sting, yeah, well, that's the thing. As much as that would sting on the merits of just Trump alone, I think that there's that second part which automatically entails, which is if Trump gets away with it, I think it automatically triggers the second thing, which is it then sends the most definitive signal out there to other corrupt grifters.
I get it.
And either party.
Not ideal.
Like basically, it is a necessary condition, I think, for the republic to be in any sort of healthy state, for Trump and his family and his allies to face some level of accountability, not just losing elections, right? But after they leave office, some sort of accountability by way of the law. Otherwise, I think we are on the decline, and I don't see a way to correct that. I don't see a timeline where Trump gets away with it and the republic, the country gets better.
Well, listen, it's one day at a time, brother. Like, I can't. There's no, I don't have a magic. No one can tell you exactly what is going to happen, and if that day comes, and we'll take that challenge in stride. And I think Donald Trump represents a pretty unique challenge. This is definitely a challenging moment for our republic, but I look back at the last 250 years of history. This is not the first challenge that we faced. And on balance, we are heading in a direction that I would say looks like progress. There were a lot of people that faced no accountability for their traitorous, treasonous actions after, the Civil War. And now I have an interracial relationship and there's no laws against it, right? Like, they're still racist, but they, mostly lost. Like, they very overwhelmingly lost. I mean, we have fucking Bad Bunny doing Super Bowl halftime shows, right? Like, there's remnants of the Confederacy, and there's lessons that should be learned from the Confederacy, I think, but the moment that we're in right now, I think, is like we still have about fucking 20 to 50 to maybe even like 300 steps before we're in a situation where we're in a civil war, and then we have to maybe like forego the Constitution in some cases, right?
Yeah, well, but that's part of the problem too. Is like I take your point about the Confederacy, and a more modern example, I think, is the pardon of Nixon, and I think historians, maybe not so much with Reconstruction. I mean, Reconstruction was kind of aborted, right? It effectively was DOA after President Lincoln was assassinated because, his successors really didn't carry it through.
Yep.
And, even the 14th Amendment disqualifications, like Congress eventually, I think just a few years later, passed like a mass pardon allowing, ex-Confederates who were disqualified under the 14th Amendment to resume office. And so I think because there wasn't like this systemic program to, eliminate the legacy of the Confederacy, that had massive negative implications down the road. It was kind of like a half measure. Remember Breaking Bad, where Jonathan Banks' character, why am I blanking on his name? The old bald guy, Mike, where Mike was like, how he chose the half measure. And then the same thing with like President Ford's pardon, President Nixon. Really bad. There are a lot of. Yeah. I mean, I think in hindsight, like there was a time, I think, I don't know what the polling is, I can't remember, but I think eventually the polling became popular for Ford's pardon of Nixon, but now it's regressed again. The American people look back on it like, that was probably a bad message to send. And so it's like, then you look at Brazil and South Korea. Two very recent examples of what they did to their insurrectionist wannabe dictator dipshits, right? Yeah, and so that's what I'm talking about. And again, going back to your question of, you asked me, do you see why I have a healthy fear of the tit for tat? And I told you I do. Given what we discussed, do you understand why, others like myself have, see the tit for tat in some form as absolutely necessary despite the risk? Like, do you see the flip side to that?
I understand your sense of urgency. I think in your mind, you think that by doing something like having Newsom run explicitly on a platform of investigating Trump, you think this is in service to a larger project of preserving liberalism in your own way. Ironically, but it's my view that I think you're misguided. I just disagree with you. I think that these actions would only, further erode the guardrails and put us even more down that path. That's the big difference of opinion that we have. And I don't think we can reconcile that, but I'm good with you having a different belief on this. Like, I apologize if sometimes the banter maybe goes a little too far. And so I don't want you to get the sense that
it just didn't read didn't read as banter. Like I said, I accept your apology. I took it at face value just based on many comments that you said. And I also wasn't looking at your face when you were talking about it. I'm
I feel so bad for Hutch. I feel like it feels like he's stepping on so many people's toes lately. I just, I guess I don't know. I just don't hear Josiah interact with him too much now since he's not on the Live and Learn, so it's hard to say.
listening to your audio, it seemed like it was, it seemed like it was genuinely condescending. And so if it was banter,
I mean, if
it was pure banter.
Sometimes I wonder a little bit. It's hard to know for sure, but like I wonder if our gaming background plays into that at all. Because Hutch was Hutch ever? I'm not making accusations. No, never mind. Because he played FPS. There were slurs associated with that game, but I'm sure he would never went down that road. But I'm sure he's heard and said a lot of rough stuff coming from that background. And then same thing with me in pro gaming. Like it's just like a really rough world. Whereas Josiah seems like he comes from an incredibly normal, ordinary world of normal, ordinary people that aren't like going crazy against each other online. So I wonder if he just interprets it a lot more harshly than maybe Hutch would imagine he would. I guess maybe, I don't know.
No, I've been known to condescend from time to time. Yes, but I think I don't know. In my opinion, it kind of goes both ways. Like, but I choose not to take that. Like, for me, that's not off limits. And where I guess this is.
Were you trying to be mean in Pisco in your last conversation? I couldn't tell. If you couldn't tell, you couldn't tell. I think if I wanted to be really mean, I think that would have been a way rougher conversation. I think I was being pretty chill, but who knows? Maybe that's not how it came off. Who knows?
This is us just like establishing boundaries, right? But
well, no, I mean, it could be. I think part of the problem is maybe it's because I don't think I condescend you. I think that, you are certainly I feel you're much more aggressive with me than I am with you. But I also feel that way about a lot of people. And I usually like to keep my powder dry, and it could be just because I like to go harder on the right than the left. And maybe that just needs to be part of it. And, I just need to be willing to respond.
You planning on staying for a response to the State of the Union? The VA governor's doing it. The responses are so boring. Maybe I will. We'll see.
Kind and you, if I think you're condescending me, then I just fire back on those terms. So it's just we talked about asymmetry earlier. I don't want there to be an asymmetry in our relationship. If you condescend me, I have the right to condescend you, and if you don't want that, then don't condescend me. Does that make sense?
I 100% think that you should respond in kind if you feel that I've unreasonably condescended you. And
perfect.
Like I felt like the dynamic that I have with like the pod, not just the old cast, the new cast too. It's like we do kind of full send, and that is part of the content, part of the appeal. And I would never tell you guys not to like full send on me or go hard on me.
Came up as being nice through gritted teeth, but not gonna lie, I don't know why you wouldn't have gotten full unhinged. The difference in faith was psychosis inducing. Well, I have to be careful because while Pisco's talking to me, there are other people that are like feeding him lines. That's why in the middle of our thing, like different talking points from the Judicial community would come up. Like, oh, you're here just to make my community good for you, or moderating. You want me to moderate all criticisms of you out of my community. Like there was no like reasonable tie for some of the things that he was saying to any part of our conversation. But it was obviously there were people that were DMing him things on Discord, like giving him lines for the combo. So if I started going unhinged and screaming at him, in his mind, I imagine it would justify some of the things that he was being told. Yeah,
and we can just hash it out that way, and
Yeah, I want to be clear. I don't think you've ever imposed that on us, and I can't speak for anybody else. You've never said or suggested to me that I can't go hard in the paint on you. But I know it bothers you because you've said as much when you feel that you're being misrepresented or strawmanned or taken in bad faith, or somebody has a reductive view of your beliefs. And I feel the same way. And so, like I said, just for me, it's about symmetry. If you don't want that done to you, don't do it to me. But if you're prepared to have it done to you, then go right ahead. I like having that sort of even keel balance. And but no, listen, I accept the apology. It was done and over with as soon as you clarified, so we're good. And I think the conversation has been much more productive since then. And I'm not even looking at the screen, so you tell me when Trump shows up.
He's coming soon. It's real soon. It's about 10 minutes. But the VP's there, the House Speaker's there, so I assume he's going to start walking in soon.
Yeah, he's going to do his little tour there. It takes like 40 minutes, it seems like, to get to the lectern. But as far as the one thing that, again,
is there any value in not writing off Pisco as ideologically captured into the pocket of Judicial? No, I already have. But I try not to talk that way because I want to be able to communicate, like, at least to my audience what's happening over there, and then maybe to surrounding audiences what's happening. Like, there are a lot of people that have kind of noticed it. I think it's come up a lot in the Chud Logic stuff recently, and then Brandon Buckingham made a whole video on it that I think encompasses a lot of it, but I don't know if I'll get time to watch this today or not. But I think more and more people are kind of noticing a lot of the commentary community is like shifted away from this like very, very weirdo, toxic-y, like Gisticle, Queeman, Perry, purple guy or whatever. And then a lot of the Discords are seeing how weird it is. So yeah, but I figure Pisco's for a combination of psychological reasons is lost to that. But it's good if other people can at least see what's going on, I think.
I came in here to ask you about as far as like the Trump thing, and you did address it, but I didn't get a chance to respond as far as like Trump being weak. And again, we touched on this earlier, but I didn't get a chance to really dive deep because of time constraints. I think the disconnect for me, I can't speak for anybody else, is, while I agree with you that Trump is more of a paper tiger than he wants you to believe, and I certainly agree with you too, that we have to be careful about how we speak of Trump or the MAGA movement, because he is a fascist and an authoritarian, what does he want? He does not want to be mocked, and he wants to be treated not just as the most powerful person in the room, but truly invincible. I take your point entirely there. And certainly in 2025 and 2026, Democrats have been overperforming and Republicans have been losing elections very predictably. And I also agree with you that all else being equal, he is facing a shellacking in November. Now, I guess I'm too much of a cynic to be as confident as you are, because we're still waiting to hear about Florida gerrymandering. Virginia gerrymandering is kind of in limbo now because a court struck it down.
Looks like we're going to win that war, though. It looks like, I don't know, the pollsters that I follow seem to think that we're going to come out the better of it.
Yeah, no, I think all else being equal, that's true. But then the other thing is, and again, maybe Pisco could weigh in on this, but I think the Supreme Court the United States Supreme Court is about to make a ruling on what's left of the Voting Rights Act and stuff like that. So all of that. So all of that is to say, I would still bet on us retaking the House. I just don't know why, but by what margin, right? The pollsters that I've seen, for example, I think I've even seen Locke just say something like that we can't bank on the sort of 2018 wave that we saw, that, the margins are still not quite there yet, that it seems unlikely that we'll get 40 seats, right? So it seems more than likely that we'll retake the House. We don't know by what margin. The Senate is increasingly in play, but still slightly favored towards the Republicans. So take all of that at face value. But the thing, I guess the disconnect here is Trump is simultaneously weaker than he wants you to believe, but he's still very powerful. He is the most powerful man in the world. And he can, as I think Pisco explained.
You got to set up a talk with Hutch to hash out your disagreements. Hutch keeps strawmanning your position. I don't know if he's strawmanning it. I think I said everything I needed to say earlier. Like, I think that he just doesn't think we're as far gone as I feel like we are, and he feels like really strong electoral victories will be enough for, I guess, like writing the record or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Like, that if we win hardcore electorally coming up, that's going to be good enough. I mean, I would say the same if it was like we had like 75 seats in the Senate and like 2/3 of the House, and the next president was like 70% of the popular vote went to a Dem. Then I'd be like, okay, the American people woke up and realized. But I don't think that we managed to barely squeak by in another election and we've got a divided Senate or something so we can block some. I don't think that's enough. What's the craziest thing Trump will say today? I don't know. What are people looking for him to say? Probably, I imagine the two important points are going to be something new about tariffs and maybe something new about Iran. But other than that, it's probably literally just going to be every single campaign slogan dipshit thing that this guy said for his entire fucking presidency.
It was either yesterday or in a previous conversation you all had, I thought it was yesterday, that the presidency is the most powerful of the branches in terms of the practical day-to-day implications, in terms of agility, in terms of day-to-day reach, right? So he has a lot of power. Plus, he currently does control both chambers of Congress, and though he's not able to offer much by way of an affirmative, productive legislative agenda, he can stop anything the Democrats want to do for all intents and purposes, right? Like there are no real investigations with any sort of teeth into his corruption or anything else. So, and then, of course, you get to the Supreme Court, and we don't need to relitigate that. I think in some ways it's the most powerful of the branches, and he's got a 6-3 conservative supermajority. Yes, the tariff decision was great, but it was also kind of doing him a political favor, right? Because you could make the case that the court was trying to save him politically from himself and get rid of the tariffs. So there was a silver lining there for Trump. He just chose not to take it. And for the most part, the court has ruled in his favor. And so I think the disconnect is I think sometimes maybe your analysis does not offer or does not evaluate the areas where Trump is strong and powerful and dangerous, right? Well, I mean, sometimes I get the impression that when you say he's weak, it comes off like maybe you think he's impotent. Hey, and I think there's a way for both of these things to be true, that he is as weak as you say, but also incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous in other ways that have people terrified. We're only 1 year in.
I think there's a fundamental difference in terms of how we just think about these things. I'm much more, I would say, I don't think about like the fact that he's president for the next 3 years. We can't really do anything about that. That was baked in November of 2024. As soon as it became clear that he was going to be the president, that was it. I mean, I accepted it that night. I mean, I got to a place of like, I wasn't happy, but I got to a place of acceptance about it that night. And so I think about things in terms of not about like, just me in my life, just like personally in my life. I used to spend a lot of time thinking about the worst case scenario that could play out in my life. And you're this like booming content creator. And so I know you know what it's like to be in a really good situation, but you're just consumed with like, oh my God, what if it gets really bad? Like, I'm sure you've had that thought like 1,000 times. And
that's my life, bro.
Right. So like, I know so I know what that's like too. I know exactly what that feeling is like. And I know what it's like to worry about that in terms of like my own life and my own like mental health or my own career path or my relationship or whatever. And I'm at a point in my life now where I really don't operate that way anymore. And so all I'm thinking about is like, okay, what's the next thing? Like, what's literally the next thing that we can do to check this president? And so I've been looking at special elections in this way. It's just like little by little, like inch by inch, every seat matters, every win matters. I'm thinking about the off-cycle election in November. That felt fucking euphoric. That was like such a shot in the arm. I felt so much better about the state of things in this country after that night. And I'm thinking about the midterms. And so I'm just focusing on what can we do now to make this better. And what we can do is win a mandate from the public to check this administration. And I think we're going to do that. I think we're going to take back the House, and I think we're going to have fucking daily subcommittee hearings, public hearings, grilling this administration and further hobbling them and blocking their ability to do bad legislation like the One Big Beautiful Bill. And, you know, I'm not going to make any predictions for 2028 yet, but I feel pretty good about it right now. And I think that we're on, I just feel so much better about the situation. Fully acknowledging, by the way, that he's hurting people. He's doing real harm. And so I think about that too. Like, I think about people that have been really harmed. I mean, like, I won't get into specific details, but bro, this, like, concerns about this administration definitely directly impacts me and the people that I love and the people that I care about. And there's times when I'm fucking furious about that. And maybe I don't talk about that enough. And so it gives me people like the wrong impression of, maybe people think I'm being too cavalier and too dismissive of the danger that he poses, but I don't. I mean, I live that stress and I live that, and I'm angry for the way that he's hurting people that I love and their family and, you know, these kinds of things. And so I don't know if that explains my process, but I'm just thinking. No, about,
it does.
Like, you know,
it does. Like I said, I think that's probably the disconnect for me. Again, I can't speak for anybody else. Like, Trump is weak, yes, but he's also powerful, yes. Like, he's not just weak, and he's not just powerful. He's both
weaker than Biden. He's weaker than Biden was at this point in his term. Like, unquestionably weaker, way weaker. And yet the way that he's talked about is that he's like somehow strong in a way that Biden wasn't. And I think
he is. I think he is in the sense that, and I mean, I certainly agree with you that in a lot of ways he's weaker than Biden. I think where Trump projects strength and why this is reflected in the polls and why the vast majority of Americans have this impression, you know, like there was a polling about this Democratic Party, strong, effective, you know, all these things, and the Republican Party is, you know, by double digits leading the Democrats in strong and effective, even though they're also seen as more radical and all these things, is because there's a ruthlessness and a cruelty to Trump and the Republicans that Biden and the Democrats did not. So I agree with you that on, you know, it's almost like, you know, who was the I'm trying to think of like a good Game of Thrones metaphor, but one's not jumping to mind immediately. But, you know, cruelty and a willingness to use your waning power can look stronger than someone who is more powerful but exercises restraint.
Lord of the Rings,
that makes any sense.
Lord of the Rings, the guy that's eating the grapes, that guy.
Tom Bombadil or whatever, that might be it. I don't know, but I think that's what it is. But anyway, I know he's about to speak soon, but again, appreciate the conversation. Appreciate you clarifying as far as like the Trump weakness stuff, and yeah, we're good, buddy.
I appreciate you coming in and just like, I mean it. I appreciate you coming in and being honest with me about that stuff. I don't mind if you use your big voice with me. I do apologize. I really do apologize. I feel bad that, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. Like, I like you a lot, bro. I want to be friends with you.
Of course. Yeah, likewise. And the friendship's not in jeopardy.
I want it to go for years, man. I want you and I to still be talking like 10 years from now. 20.
I don't understand how they're so triggered with each other. Or I guess Josiah's triggered? I don't know.
20 years from now, okay?
100%. We're good.
And there's not a lot of people I just want you to know. I don't like most people, okay? Like, I'm selective about like who I want to be friends with.
I know, and you were very, very transparent about that when we first talked about Live and Learn. And the last thing I'll say is this. Again, you don't have to publicly respond, but what I said in that text, be thinking about it, because I think that would be very relevant.
Yeah,
you just think about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoa, wait, what? Wait, is that red? Do we know what that text is? How are you not noticing what's happening? Josiah's attacking Hutch because of Pisco. He's trying to throw it back at him using the same words Hutch used on Pisco. No, I don't think so. Stop.
And the last thing I'll say is this. Again, you don't have to publicly respond, but what I said in that text, be thinking about it, because I think that would be it's very relevant.
Yeah,
you just think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, buddy.
All right, man.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, see you, buddy. Bye.
Lambda Rail. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for 9 months. Dodge Vidania with $5. Before he leaves, tell him the Hornets suck. Damn, I missed my opportunity. I apologize. Warhood with the primer responded with $5. Pardons should be overridable by Congress the same way that vetoes are. Ooh, I like that idea. Honestly, I think we should just get rid of the pardons, but Jelly Enlow with 64 months. Michael with $5. Live stream Hutch State of the Union. Let's go. Swannybird with $20. Acquiescence to judicial review is a norm, not in the Constitution. The question of ignoring the Supreme Court is one of undoing another norm. Not saying I agree with it, but Josiah is right that there's nothing binding the president to the Supreme Court. I think I knew that. Or maybe I didn't. I don't know. Advice giver with 80 months.
Hold on, I'm eating. You fucking loser. Are you ready for the most boring 3 hours
that
of
he plans to
bullshit
go in
in the
front of
universe?
Congress and tell everyone about Hutch? Hutch's left
no,
curving
I think he's
penis.
Gonna come out like Tony
you guys
Stark and announce the war on
you know
Iran,
way too
and then he's
much
gonna, like,
about my
have a screen
fucking
behind
penis.
him, and he's gonna throw his hands up, and then the bombing
This
is gonna
is
start.
years of not having any kind of filter.
I think he's about to hit us with the ultimate burger.
You guys hit me with some really
But he might hit
intimate
us with the
details of my
chucks,
life
yeah, we'll
sometimes, and I'm like,
the ultimate burger.
He's gonna rant for 3 hours, which is gonna be funny to see because it's 9 o'clock. This is an old fucking man. He's doing worse in health than Biden was. We might see him die on stage.
Oh my god!
But
In a video game.
But I hope not.
In a
But I
video
hope not.
game.
Yeah.